Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Twisted Cast for another amazing episode. And today we are going to be reviewing slash going over our personal thoughts on Twisted Metal SMALL BRAWL, released back in November 26th of 2001. That's right, it released after Twisted Metal Black on the PS2. But we'll get into that later. But first, we're going to go over kind of just what we've been doing with these reviews is when did we first get our hands on Twisted Metal SMALL BRAWL? For me, I talked about this, I want to say, in one of the episodes already on this channel, but I'll go over a little bit again where back in the day, I wasn't allowed to play Twisted Metal Black. So I used to go over to my neighbor's house, my good friend Michael. Shout out to Michael if you're listening, man. Doubt you are, but hope you're doing well. I remember going over to his house all the time. We played Twisted Metal together, and he was allowed to get Twisted Metal Black because his parents just didn't care, like what he played growing up. And so I'd play that all the time at his house. And then one year, it was probably the year Small Bro came out. I don't remember if it was 2001 or 2002, sometime around then. He got it for like a birthday present or something. And I remember he didn't even open it. He just looked at the cover and he was like, nah, I like black. I'm not a fan of this. It looks like it's for kids. So one day when I was over at his house, he handed it to me. He's like, here you go. You can have it. And so I took it home, opened it up, and I played the hell out of it. I actually had a lot of fun with Small Brawl. Even as a kid, I really enjoyed it. Now, I don't remember if I played it more or the same amount as like TM3 and 4 or even TM2, but I remember it was a good game in my collection. I enjoyed a lot of it. But it was a shame that my buddy didn't give it a chance like he should have. So that's why I'm kind of curious to hear your guys' thoughts on when you first got into it. So Drew, when did you first play Small Brawl?
Think I probably played it the most recent out of any of you. I did not even know it existed until, I don't know, 5 years ago or so. And then, like your friend, just kind of didn't give it the time of day because
Mm-hmm.
I wanted the big boy Twisted Metal. But for a video earlier this year, I did play it for the first time. And my immediate thought is that it is the PS1 Twisted Metal that the world deserves, and that I'm ashamed that I let it go, unacknowledged for so long, because I think the levels are the best of the PS1 era. I think the gameplay feels smooth and solid, and all around it just feels like a game that is a joy, an absolute delight to experience. And I wish more things in the world were that joyous and fun. Okay, KongDoo, please tell me your thoughts.
When I first played, I don't, with Small Bro, I honestly don't remember where it came from. Like, I don't even remember getting the game. I own it, but I don't remember where I got it from. I honestly don't know where it came from, but I played it a lot actually as a kid. I really enjoyed it, and that's why I was shocked when so many people always said they didn't like it. I found that a lot of people said they don't like the game for whatever reason, because I remember enjoying it a lot as a kid. I played it all the time, and especially even now, I think the game is really good. So I don't know where that hatred. I mean, I guess maybe because it's like a kid, like Twisted Metal as kids. Because Twisted Metal is the most serious, like gut wrenching story on planet Earth. So maybe that's why. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I mean, like I don't. I have nostalgia for it, but at the same time, I don't, because I don't know where it came from. That's the thing I genuinely don't understand. Like, it's maybe I'm blocking that part out of my life for some reason. I don't remember what happened, but I do like the game though. It's like I don't have much else to say from that, because I feel like most of my memorable experiences of Small Brawl came from recently rather than kid. But I still remember enjoying it fondly. So, Dave, when was the first time you played Small Brawl?
That was the first time I played it.
Yeah, the
Now,
first time you
considering
ever played Small Brawl.
I was the lead game designer and art director on it, I would say while it was being built.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an unusual project. It was the project I didn't know I was going to get. Accepted an offer from Incognito to go move out to Utah to work on the next Twisted Metal, and no one told me it was going to be RC cars. So I had very big ideas for it and still have a lot of those designs. My God, I could make 3 or 4 more very in-depth car combat games with the amount of designs I had ready for this series when I went and joined the team. And then I got RC cars. But if when you get RC cars, you make RC car lemonade. In other words, you
It
make the
works.
best of it. But yeah, that was the first time was playing it from inception to launch, and then I actually didn't touch the game for I want to say 20 years, if not 22,
Wow.
until I actually saw you guys making YouTube videos about it and giving it praise, which is something I never heard given this game for decades. So, I'm more than happy to talk about a lot of that experience. But yes, that was the first time I ever played it, was in development.
And then
What
as
if
for
you didn't play
Winters,
it?
oh
What
sorry,
if you just built the game and never played it? Like I never touched this game before.
That's
There's
impossible.
people in the credits.
yeah,
of most games that
that's impossible. Like what?
Right?
Actually,
Yeah,
nowadays it's not impossible because you just use AI to create your game and then just never touch
There you
it.
go.
Mm.
Yeah. Kong's joke is also kind of on the nose too. Is yes, there are people in the credits who actually never played the game.
It's sad but
often
true.
that's like a publisher thing. Like somebody who worked on a small piece of tech that is carried through several games
Hmm.
will often get credits on a game, even though they actually never touched that game. Same with other types of titles that are like that.
Yeah. So suppose it makes sense. Like if somebody like painstakingly spent 2 years making an engine from scratch, and then if 15 games in the future use that engine, they probably still credit that person, I would assume.
Yeah, or some kind of boot up code for the PS1. They write it once and then it goes into all the PS games. It's just copy and paste into those, but they still get credit like as if they had worked on the game itself.
Wow, that's crazy, but cool though. And then Winters, when did you first get into Small Brawl?
This past April.
Oh man, so you and Drew both pretty much just recently got into it.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Small Brawl existed, but I don't know. I never thought much of it at the time when I was, playing Twisted Metal back in early 2010s.
Hmm.
Um, but for most of my life, I didn't even know Small Brawl existed, just because you go to a Walmart or a GameStop with your parents. It's just like, okay, we're getting this one. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you never really think much of it. But in the time that I did play it a few times on live stream, I've always had an enjoyable experience. Although I just think hard mode's kind of bullshit because some of the bosses are bullet sponges.
That is true.
Um, yeah, what's the name of that boss in the like halfway through the playthrough on the golf
Trapper.
course?
Trapper.
Trapper.
Yeah, Trapper. Yeah, Trapper's a piece of shit. So,
Yes,
but
bosses on hard mode are the bullets.
Yeah.
They're egregious.
but I like the setting. Like I like the levels, like how they're just kind of they're fun. The game doesn't take itself too seriously, which is something I appreciate.
Hmm.
It's nice to see the different themes that it takes on, like especially for so many of the other Twisted Metal games, it's like, oh, we're in skyscrapers, New York, and this one's like, oh, fuck that, we're in a treehouse, bitch. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's different than what the series did up to that point, with the exception of, I think, maybe four.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was the biggest thing that always, even as a kid, I remember playing Small Brawl that stood out to me that was so different than the other ones is like, yeah, all the other ones technically, I mean, whether they intended to or not, tried to make it take place in the real world in a way. Obviously, some of them, like TN3 and 4, are very goofy and hyper realistic, quote unquote, but it is still, they're human players driving regular vehicles and regular size levels. And now you're RC cars. You're not actual humans in the vehicles. It's little tiny cars. So there was a lot of creativity shown in the level design with being able to be like in a kitchen, riding on the countertops, messing with a plumber while he's doing his job, being up in the treehouse, like you stated before. It's really cool coming to that concept after playing these more grounded, quote unquote, levels in the regular or the other Twisted Metal games, I should say. So I always found that to be probably my favorite aspect of Small Brawl, is just feeling like it's a completely different universe altogether in a way.
Hmm. It doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me that Winters and Drew never played it or didn't know much about it until recently, because I think it only sold 130,000 units.
Oh,
And I'm
that's
kind
so
of
crazy.
curious how
Lots of
many
people don't
they
even know it
actually
exists.
printed.
Right.
And we only had one very short commercial for it that did not run very long, and one magazine ad,
Mm-hmm.
compared to basically all the other Twisted Metals, which were carpet bombing the TV and magazines, covers and
Yeah.
getting exclusives and things like that. So there was not a lot of support from Sony for this product in general, which
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
interesting
They
to
probably just don't
me
want to
because
compete with Black.
Right.
yeah, they
They
didn't
came
want to
out
keep
6 months after, so
yeah, that's why they actually moved Small Brawl from the PS2 to the PS1 because they didn't want them on the same console, and they didn't want them competing sales wise. Being both the same franchise. But I think once they moved it to the PS1, they were just like, this isn't going to sell very well. The PS1 is,
On the way
it's
out.
sunsetting right now. It's on the
Old
way
news.
out. So let's
That old
not throw a
hat.
lot of money into it. And they just kind of let it die.
Yeah. Which is so sad. It's just like every time, I hear the stories of like what you guys went through and how Sony just kind of let it die in a way. It just kind of blows my mind that somebody greenlit it in the first place. They should have
Well,
allocated you guys to doing something that would be successful and that you would have had a fair chance at like releasing something that wouldn't have just been, oh, here's one little commercial while we're also going to shove 17 commercials of this other game that came out 6 months prior. That's for the new next gen system, so it's all cool and interesting. Where you guys get stuck with the PlayStation 1 version.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I thought it was cheaper to towards the back end of the PS1. I thought it was cheaper to make games for it. I thought that's why they put
possibly,
Small Brawl on the PlayStation because it was cheaper for them to release games on the PlayStation 1. That's why there's a bunch
no,
of garbage on the back end of the PS1. I thought, or
no,
was
it
it
was
more third parties? So
Mm.
maybe I'm thinking of that. They allowed more third party developers to release games. Maybe
maybe.
maybe,
that's when a
but
lot of bad games came out. Was towards the back end of the PS1, like the lower
Hmm.
quality stuff.
yeah, no, this was originally supposed to be a PS2. And the whole premise of this, the whole goal of Small Brawl was they saw that auto combat sales were basically dying off with every single game that was being released in that genre. So they decided that, oh shit, everybody's going to be aging out of auto combat. How do we keep this going, for a little bit longer? So they decided to make a kid-friendly version using RC cars and the Twisted Metal kid versions in order to basically suck in a whole new generation into auto combat so that they can then grow up and then make more Twisted Metals for them. And for the most part it worked. Like I have talked to or seen messages from hundreds of people at this point saying, oh, this got me into Twisted Metal, I loved it, this is my favorite because I played it first and then I played all the other Twisted Metals because of it. So Sony's goal of making a kid-friendly version worked, but they just didn't support it enough. And I think it really was because it got pushed to PS1, which was sunsetting at the time. So
Yeah.
it really wasn't worth their money. And when they saw the sales of Black, they're probably like, okay, we're fine. We actually don't need to put a lot of money towards this PS1 version now.
Yeah.
So let's put all our chips on. Let's bet on Black.
And like I understand the concept of, oh, we wanted to put on the PS1 not only just to not compete with Black, but also all the younger kids are going to get hand-me-downs from the older kids who are now upgrading to PS2s. But they also should have looked at it in the case of like if they wanted it for kids to be the quote unquote next generation of car combat fans, most kids I would assume during those years were getting PS2s for Christmas. Like or maybe they're getting it from another sibling or sharing it with a sibling who got it for Christmas kind of thing. And I feel like they should have just released both on the PS2. Like I understand 100% about wanting to not interfere with the Black sales and stuff like that, but it would have made more sense in my opinion to be like, let's get it on the next generation for this new generation of kids so that they have the choice, right? They can go with Black if they're older and they can buy that game, or if they can't and they're too young and they still want to play car combat, well, here's Small Brawl for them. And I feel like they would have been pretty decent tandem wise in terms of sales. I feel like it definitely would have sold a lot more.
Yeah.
Well, I
There
thought.
were- Oh, sorry. Go
you
ahead,
Dave.
I'll finish my thought real quick. You're 100% right in that they did do the research and said, yes, the younger generation, from what they saw, was getting hand-me-downs of the PS1. So that's why they also wanted to push Small Brawl to the PS1.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was a misstep, because back to your other point is everybody wanted the PS2. It was the latest thing.
Yeah.
And Black and Small Brawl were completely different audiences that I don't think they would have competed with each other.
Right.
You know, a lot of systems have mature games and kid games on them, and I think that's where that split would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And with keeping the upgraded graphics of the PS2 version of Small Brawl, I think it would have been a bigger hit, along with some of the better tech using the Black engine, which was the original plan. So I think that they kind of shot themselves a little bit in the foot by going, hey, let's give kids the shitty version of PlayStation, PlayStation 1. And I'm not saying it's like shitty, but like in comparison to 2, at that moment in time, you're just like, why do I want this old thing? It's going straight to Goodwill.
Right.
At that point, I want the newest, shiniest thing with the best graphics. So I think everybody, young and old, was kind of chasing the new PS2 and the games that were coming out for it. So making it PS1 was a mistake on their part, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Kong. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was gonna say, like, even if they were on the same platform, I don't think they would. I was gonna say they had the same thing you did of them having completely different audiences, because I thought with a lot of kids, like, isn't their perception of coolness like what the older kids think is cool? So like them thinking Black is cool, like that their little kids are gonna think, oh, that this older kid thinks that's awesome, so that means it's cool. Like, I think it would have brought in a different audience. Like, I just don't understand like why Small Brawl was greenlit. Honestly, like, I get, like, even still, like, to make it specifically for kids, like, little kids are just gonna think what the older kids think is cool is the real cool thing. So
I guess it depends on like the household you grow up in. Like my parents, they weren't super strict on games. Like they gave me like GTA like 1 and 2 when I was like 7. So they weren't like super paying attention to like what was in games at the time. But I do know for a fact when I showed them Twisted Metal Black at the store, because I very vividly remember I didn't have an allowance growing up, but I was able to like sell my my Power Wheels. If you guys remember those things, I got a Power Wheels for like a birthday, and a year later the PS2 came out, and I really wanted one, but my parents didn't want to spend the money for it. So my mom said, well, if you can get somebody to buy like your Power Wheels, maybe put that money towards a PS2. And sure enough, I did. I was able to sell it to my neighbor, and I went right to Walmart and got a PS2 that day. And when I was at the store getting the PS2, I wanted a game, and I was already a huge TM fan, and I saw Black just came out, and I was like, I really want to get this. And my dad looked at it, and he looked at the back of the cover, and he saw it was mature, and he said, no, like, you can't do that. So if at that point in time, if Small Brawl was right next to it, I could have gotten Small Brawl, and I would have been just as happy. So I think it just comes down to like, I see what you're saying 100%, Kong, with like, those kids will look at Black and be like, that one's cooler. I don't want Small Brawl. That's for little kids, and I'm a cool kid. But if you're kind of stuck with what you get because of limitations of not being able to buy it yourself, or your parents don't want you to play it, being stuck with Small Brawl, quote unquote, I think once they would play it, they would have really enjoyed it. I think it just would have sold more in general. And then you got, the people, like my parents, who would have bought Small Brawl at Christmas or whatever for their kid, or my grandparents would have bought it for their grandchild, kind of thing, knowing that it's for kids.
Yeah, if we left it on PS2, we could have had network play between Small Brawl and Black.
Oh,
so
man.
all these kids playing Small Brawl RC cars could have been kicking the crap out of the Black players. It would have been fantastic.
That would have been crazy.
Kidding.
Imagine someone mods that in a Twisted Metal Black Online.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
Maybe one day. But yeah, it's interesting kind of looking back at the business decisions of like why Sony would have done the way they did it. But yeah, like you said, they just shot themselves in the foot.
What was the budget?
That I am not privy to, but I have kind of pieced it together in my head based on the amount of people who were on that title.
$10.
And kind of the general salaries at the time. So and this is also I'm purely speaking about the team that was building it, not the budget that would have included like people who put their names on it who really didn't work on it. Like some people in Incog North and in Sony Santa Monica. So my guess probably would have been, I'm going to say average 50,000 per person on a
Okay.
12-person team. So I want to say $600,000 just for the development of it.
Jeez.
And back then, that's not that much, right? Like, 'cause
Yeah,
that's
I don't know
technically a
what was the
AAA title.
average back then? Like for like, do you know what the average was for like a game development?
I mean,
Oh,
V8, I was making 50 grand a year on V8. So it was probably roughly, around that too, because I'm pretty sure there's people who are making less. This is again, this is like Utah.
Yeah.
So it's about 30% cheaper out there. And the salaries were about 30% cheaper out there compared to LA. If
Yeah.
it was LA, it would have been double that.
Wow. And you got to also take into account of like the economy at the time was a lot different too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's a lot different. I mean, what a lot of people don't understand too, and that's just, I'm purely talking like salaries. Like if you spin up a studio and hire a bunch of people, you got costs like desks, computers, internet, office space, parking,
Yeah.
commuter
Marketing.
benefits if there's any kind of if the company's going to support that kind of thing, and then just offering 401ks and health and all that stuff adds about another 100 grand per head count for people on a project, no matter whether it's games or any other kind of industry out there. So
Wow.
it's rather expensive to employ full-time people.
So probably the average if it was a AAA title, because I would assume like TM2 was AAA, right? Based on the sales of TM1. So I would assume on a AAA title back in the 90s, early 2000s, budget must have been like $1 million on average. Maybe a little more than that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talking to Lord Wallace, he said that Jaffe said that TM2 was, or was it one? It might have been one, was made for 800.
Yes.
But I assume that is purely the people only working on the title and not like outside producers and the sound guy and the guy who did the the PS1 launch code or things like that.
Right.
Because all that's going to dramatically up the budget.
Yeah, it's wild how much. I mean, just not even games, but movies, like media in general. It's amazing how much money goes into projects like that you just don't even think about. So yeah, I could easily see even Small Brawl. I could easily see being like an almost $1 million budget. But
it wouldn't surprise me with all the bells and whistles when all is said and done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't sound like sadly Sony made their money back on that one.
They did.
What?
They did. The reason I know that they did is because I got a $300 royalty check off of
Wow.
Small
Hell
Brawl.
yeah.
So they
And
profited
you
a
only
slight.
get that after they recoup all their costs.
Okay. Well,
So
I mean,
I think it was break even.
But hey, still not a failure though. So that's what matters.
Unfortunately, most games, if they don't make double what you put into them, they're considered a failure.
Right.
So it was a failure.
That is sad. But I mean, breaking even to me, that's a plus. And just like TM3 and 4, it also was only sold in North America, right? They didn't have a overseas Japanese version, so.
Yeah. And I think Kong had some thoughts on that if it actually was overseas, given the color palette and the RC cars. But I'm going to be quiet for now. I'm taking up too much of the conversation.
No, you're good. People want to hear from you, trust me. But Kong, did you have something about that though? About like overseas distribution for Small Brawl?
Small Brawl. I talked about that with Twisted Metal 2.
Oh, okay.
With the Japanese port.
Yeah.
We talked about it last time with Black, with the EU version was really butchered with like having worse performance and stuff. But
I think what I'm recalling, Bakong, is you talked about like if Small Brawl was released overseas, it probably would have done better than.
It probably would have, because I think the way that the game's designed is probably more, because obviously like I mean, if some people aren't like understanding of how Asian culture is with like entertainment, like it's more
Yeah.
vibrant stuff and more like cartoony stuff is like really popular. So that's why they wanted to make the changes, like with Twisted Metal 2, like when they were suggesting to move it overseas, like make them shoot fruit and stuff like that. I think in general, Small Brawl probably would have
Been fine.
over the top enough to sell well in Japan. I just don't understand why Twisted Metal 1 and 2 were. That's the thing I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Small Brawl probably would have been done okay in Japan. Not like super great, but I think it would have done much better than 1 and 2.
Yeah, I can agree. I can definitely see that. You know, not only just because of the bright aesthetic, but
Well, they're
the
also not
fact-
real cars either.
Right,
It doesn't have that,
yeah.
that car
Yeah.
culture thing that the North America audience likes. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Is it does skirt the whole car culture that America has, where there's a lot of RC and remote control toys in Japan, from what I've seen,
Yeah,
that might
Yeah.
kind of gravitate with them a little bit.
and it also dances around their whole ethics on violence in games.
Hmm.
So
yeah, there's no blood or anything. There's no people dying and stuff.
yeah, no screams when people die.
Give the screams.
TM4
I
scream
would
should be
argue
in
that
every
scenes
game.
have a lot of child death for sure.
Mm-hmm.
They got pretty brutal.
Yeah, child death is. There's a lot of strange things about their culture.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird to us because it's not. We don't share that culture, so
Right, and they probably say the same thing about us, which is fair.
yeah, they don't understand how like the stuff that a lot of like Americans do. They don't really understand like why they enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same.
Mhm.
They find it strange, just like we find a lot of other things strange from other cultures.
Yeah. And I had a couple things I wrote down just from the wiki on Small Brawl. There wasn't a whole lot on there, sadly. If anybody that edits the wiki, I'm sure, I'm assuming like anybody can edit it. But if there's anybody out there listening that does edit the wiki, you can add some stuff on there from our conversation because it deserves more love on there. But one of the things that caught my eye, which I don't remember, Dave, if you ever brought this up to me or not, you might have in the past, but I don't remember this. It said that apparently the game was originally going to be called just Twisted Metal Kids, but the name was dropped. Is that true? Was that ever a thing?
Yeah, I heard that one being thrown around. That was a working title, and it's probably right around when we were trying to nail down the actual name of it. But marketing usually comes in and creates those kind of final names based on research and then taking a little bit of feedback from us. But I also remember it like being called Twisted Metal Tots at one point. We were just throwing out weird names, or RC Mayhem or little things like that.
Yeah.
And then, it'll kind of go up the chain and be like, we like these or we hate all these, and we're just going to come up with our own thing. So yeah, that I remember that one being tossed around as a working title and potential final name, but it never made it.
Thank God.
Like, Small Brawl is like a super clever name. Like that's probably my favorite thing about the game before I played it was the name. Just so clever, so good.
Because it rhymes.
Right.
It's got good.
Which Twisted Metal's always had like really good names for things, whether it's cars or levels.
Yeah, like
or...
Twisted Metal 2, such a good name.
Yeah, Twisted Metal 4 as well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you think of levels in Twisted Metal 1, Freeway, Free for All, Riverside Rumble, like just a lot of alliteration and whimsy.
Yeah,
I
that's
really
true.
enjoyed those.
Yeah.
London.
Antarctica.
Well,
the
names in Twisted Metal 2, they have there's the location and then the names like the Drop Zone or Holland Field of Scream, stuff like that. So I always thought those were fun.
Well,
I mean, they're not like the
that
most
is
clever thing in the world. But
yeah, that's a good point. What is New York? I can't remember. Is it the Big Leap?
Yeah.
Yes, the Big Leap.
Instead of the Big Apple.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's true. They've always had some good ideas. And like you said too, with characters, that's also been like, because I feel as a developer, like if I was to ever make a game as a developer or an artist or whatever, the hardest thing for me, no matter what the project is always like coming up with a name is always the hardest thing ever. I don't know why. Like Small Brawl, I could have never imagined that. I probably would have been the guy like saying, "Oh, Twisted Metal Tots, let's do that."
Was that an in-house name, Dave? Or was that like Do you know, or like was that just like marketing decided to call it Small Brawl? Like, do you know where that name came from?
I need to look at my notes. Honestly, for all I know, I could have come up with that name and it stuck, but I don't think so. I have a bunch of old emails I could look through and try to pinpoint where that name came from. But I mean, my best guess would probably be marketing came back with that one and just said, "This is the title we want." So that would be my best guess at this point in time. It's been 20 plus years, so I don't exactly remember where that name came from. So we'll see.
I want to give you credit for it. Thank you,
There you go. Give me credit for it. Do you guys hear screaming in the background?
No.
Screaming?
No.
Is that somebody dying?
Okay, no.
That's just
Neighbors are
you.
having a party and everybody's singing at the top of their lungs, and it's
Oh,
like right
Lord.
across the alley from
I
me.
was
So
about to say, it's like,
I was
do
gonna
you
say,
hear
there's
that
something you
screaming
want
in
us
the
to know?
background?
Yeah, that's
Somebody's
just
tied up.
LA
lots
for
of
you.
murder going on here.
Yeah, right. It's like, yeah, I got somebody tied up in the other room. I just want to make sure you guys don't hear.
Don't want to be rude. That's all.
It is Southern California, so that's kind of par for the course down here.
Yeah, sadly. Oh man. Another thing I had written down here from the wiki was, and I was actually thought this is kind of cool. I never realized this. This is the only game in the series where not a single vehicle has a flamethrower as a special weapon.
You adult.
It's too.
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering that. Like,
It's not PG
would
enough.
there's fire in the game though? So
There is.
yeah, the napalms.
I could not think of a really good flamethrower-esque weapon that would have fit within fireworks at the time. And then during one of my streams, someone said, "What about a sparkler?" And I was just like, "Where were you 20 years ago, you bastard?"
Oh.
Oh man. Actually though, to
Yeah.
be honest, I like Thumper's special in Small Brawl. It's kind of glitchy, but it's cool.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
Especially on the bosses.
and I've always said this, like I will stand by TM3 and Small Brawl being the only games in the series to make Thumper make sense to his name. Where it's like a boombox or like, a sound wave is what's hurting the enemy, not flamethrowers. Like I get it, like flamethrowers look badass, but I don't know, I prefer the sound wave. It's way cooler to me. It's more creative.
Yeah, and that's why I went that direction, because I did feel like flamethrower was very out of place for that, for that character. And being Thumper, it is a boombox kind of term, and I like the sound wave kind of attack. He was actually kind of an improvement over John Torque from Vigilante 8, the first one.
Oh,
Where I wanted to give it more of a directional sound attack, so I carried that design from V8 over into Small Brawl. Yeah, the base quake, except directional.
that would have been interesting to see that in Small Brawl. Base quake.
Yeah, that would be. I even gave it like the low rider bounce when he uses his special, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people didn't notice.
Yeah, it's little.
Did you guys know about the boss glitches with the Thumper special back then, where it
No.
like goes nuts and throws them across the map and does almost all their health?
Yeah.
No idea. No. I played through as much as I could, but because I was wearing so many hats on the project, I couldn't catch everything with every character. And when I saw that, I was like, man, this is kind of cool. Like, this is really neat. And I get it. And it's nice in that there's finally a weapon that can really punish big armored characters,
Yeah.
as opposed to all the flat damage that the other ones were doing.
Right. I had it happen to me. I might have been during my last stream with Mr. Grimm, but I was playing in Small Brawl and I got hit by Thumper's special, and it stuck me to it and dragged me across the map, and I got killed in one hit. I was like, I've never had that happen to me by the AI. Like, I've had it happen to the boss battles, where like Trapper, for instance, I swear every time I fight Trapper, if I'm Thumper, every time he uses a special, he gets dragged across the entire level, and it takes a huge chunk out of him, and it's super satisfying. But
Wait, that happened to you with Grimm?
yeah, I was playing as Grimm. Yeah, on the why am I drawing a blank on the level name? But the kitchen. I was on the top countertop next to the what is it? Not the oven, the microwave. And I saw Thumper, and I was running at him, about to freeze him, and he shot his special out, and it like sucked me all the way across the level and threw me off the countertop, and I died like in midair. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like,
That's
no.
that's really rare because the reason his he's able to damage big cars like that is because it has to pass through their collision, and every second it takes to go through the collision, it
Oh,
causes extra damage. So Grim being so small, it usually is very ineffective against small cars. So
yeah.
you got a 1 in a million hit there.
Nice. That takes the sting off a little bit, I guess.
Skill issue.
Skill issue. Yeah, I'll have to go back and find that and make a clip and send it to you because it was wild. Let's see. Another thing too, which we talked about this before, which I always find this pretty interesting though, is so if you guys don't know, if you haven't played Small Brawl, Axel is an unlockable character in the game. They're not unlocked by default at the beginning, but they originally were going to have an actual story, like an ending movie for Axel if you were to play through them all the way, but it was canned by Sony, I guess being too offensive to the or towards the physically disabled. The ending was cut, but it was added to YouTube years later, which is cool because we can see it to this day if you just look up like Small Ball Axel's ending. And I said this before. I don't think it's that offensive. At least I didn't. Like I can kind of understand, I guess, being that it's a kids game. But if anything, I don't know. I felt it was kind of like inclusive for the time. If that makes sense. Like, they're not just trying to make fun of disabled people. I felt like it was more like, hey, we have a character that is disabled in our game, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Mm.
so that's interesting. Yeah, that ending was cut, I want to say 3 or 4 months right before the end of the project.
Wow.
And we had to scramble and ended up hiding a bunch of characters and turning them into unlockables. And it's kind of unfortunate because we could have finished like Mime's ending or
Yeah.
Darkseid's ending, which I have all of those all written up, even though
Ooh.
they probably wouldn't have been the final version because Sony would have done a pass on them. But yeah, so if you look at the intro, you will see Calypso kicking Axel down a hill in his wheelchair.
Yep.
He also
Brutal.
appears at the beginning sequence where they're doing the initial battle in the playground.
Mm-hmm.
So he was going to be a main character, but the ending we had for him um, was deemed by Sony kind of at the last minute, even though I think that they wrote that ending. Um, was I definitely wrote part of it because I remember that the section that I added, and I'll talk about that in a second. But so for anybody who hasn't seen the ending, it's Axel approaches Calypso after winning the tournament, and he says, "Calypso, I won your tournament. You know, you said you could make me walk again." Which in current days would be considered kind of controversial, but for the cinematic, Calypso says, "Okay, here you go," and he opens up a small chamber on the side of his little, secret hideout,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a pair of robotic legs, kind of like something Elon Musk would make these
Right.
days, or those really cool Boston Dynamic videos where you see the robot, where like people where there's this power lifter where they can now lift up huge amounts of weight,
Yeah.
that they got kind of an exoskeleton. So Axel gets into it and he asks like, "Oh, okay, how do I make it go?" And this is where the kind of the gag comes in. And he goes, "You don't." Calypso says, "You don't." And he's got a remote control,
Mm-hmm.
and he starts walking Axel across a field of rakes, where the rakes every time he steps on them, it like smacks him in the head, and he just continues to keep doing that. So that was actually a lift from that was my contribution was like kind of the last half of it where he's walking across rakes because we wanted kind of the twist ending of like what happens if Calypso is in control of Axel, like what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Is he going to walk him off a cliff? Is he going to make him, I don't know, kick a dog or something stupid like that? So I was just like, no, I was a big fan of The Simpsons at the time, and I remember this gag with Sideshow Bob, where Sideshow Bob was Krusty the Clown's sidekick, and he was also a criminal. Um, and during one of his escapes, he has very large feet, and he had to escape across a field of rakes. And I was like, this would be a great gag for this. Like, Clips is going to walk him across a field of rakes, and it's going to be hilarious. And Sony comes back, and they're just like, hey, so we ran this around the studio. we think this is not going to fly, and we want to cut the ending. And I'm just like, why? And they're
Dang.
just like, well, because Axel says you know, Calypso, you can make me walk again, which is basically saying, what is, you know, being in a wheelchair is a bad thing, and I want to be able to walk. You know, and I was just like, okay, I see your point, even though you wrote this ending, but I see your point.
Yeah.
So we ended up pulling that ending, and it scrambled the whole character roster quite a bit, and you know, caused us to lock him away as an unlockable. And that was one cinematic we didn't get to make for like one of the other characters, you know, like or even getting Grasshopper in the game,
Yeah.
you know, who ended up being Warthog. So I'm kind of, you know, it wasn't that bad, and I agree. I think it's like this kind of puts everybody on an you know, an equal playing field. Like bad things happen to all kinds of people of all kinds of backgrounds. We're
Yeah.
not going to, you know, give special treatment to anybody, and it kind of fit within the Twisted Metal universe in that flavor.
Yeah.
So
And it's not
I'm
like Calypso was overly cruel only to the disabled kid. You know, like he
yeah
literally killed a few other kids in their endings. So it's kind of one of those things like it just, in my opinion, more shows that Calypso doesn't have favoritism. You know, it doesn't go easy on people just because of their limitations or their own, you know, misfortunes.
yeah, and then, I mean, and the endings too. Like even Calypso gets killed, you know, in a lot
Yeah.
of the endings too. Two of the cut ones, I mean, Mime straight up kills Calypso in one of them, which if I ever hit my 500 sub count, I will do a video on that one. It's kind of
Yes.
funny.
So you hear that, guys. If you want to check out Dave's videos, he makes a ton of playthroughs as well of Small Brawl, and he talks about all the behind the scenes stuff. And when he reaches 500 subs, he'll be releasing some goodies.
Yeah. The biggest thing though is just like, who released this video of Axel? Who had it? That I'm really curious about. Was it the Sony side? Was it an ex Incog? I'm
Mm,
kind of glad they did because it's not as bad as everybody thought it was. But
yeah,
um, I want to know. I want to know who has that actual ending now.
it's hard to say, and it's probably one of those things where they're gonna have to stay anonymous forever because they could get in deep trouble, right? From Sony.
Potentially. I mean, the game is released and it was an ending that they weren't happy about. I don't know if they would care today so much, but who knows? You
Yeah,
never know with NDAs, especially with big companies.
right. Very hard to say on that one. So yeah, this is kind of cool, and it's also very interesting to hear that if Axel's story wasn't deleted or wasn't canned, there. What are you saying that there wouldn't have been unlockable characters in the game? Like everyone would have been, except for obviously Trapper and Piecemeal, but would have everybody else have been ready to go right from the rip?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely had a ripple effect. I could say Axel having that ending cut, those resources could have been put to another character. We could have done
Mm,
Darkseid's ending, or we could have done Grasshoppers or Mime's ending instead.
wow.
But, you know, we lost, you know, probably months with that particular ending being cut. So it's a trade off there.
Yeah,
Like,
that's bummer. But I mean, it sucks for sure. But on another side, it's also kind of cool that you guys were able to turn that around to add extra gameplay to the game, to be like, hey, there's these secrets that you can find just by looking through the levels, and if you find these secret characters, now you got a whole extra, you know, gameplay to go through with new characters. Whereas before they would have been just handed to you throughout the main roster, so to speak. So
mhm.
I guess in a way I kind of like that more, but of course I would have loved to have seen an actual ending for Axel, Mime, Grasshopper would have been cool because I wouldn't just crap on Warthog all the time. So yeah, it's kind of crazy how that kind of domino affected all that stuff.
Yeah, Warthog deserves to be crapped on. Like that character was so hobbled together at the end.
Yeah, I like his story though, or like his ending cutscene. I think that's pretty good. But
I
yeah,
wish we could have get his original vehicle in. Having the World War II Sherman tank would have been a nice addition to the small brawl roster.
that would have been cool. Would it have been pretty slow, kind of like TM4's General Warthog, or
Yeah, it would have been slow and beefy. We would have given him a really good kind of like power missile esque special, but when it hit, it had like an explosive radius, like a remote bomb.
Oh wow. So kind
So
of like an actual
he would
tank.
have been a fun character, but instead, because of all the cuts and everything, he ended up getting Grasshopper's car instead and just painted with camo.
Oh man. Yeah, it's crazy. What could have been if Axel just wasn't cut. Damn it, Sony. The next thing I had written down here, which I know you've talked about this before, but Minion, a recurring boss, is absent due to Twisted Metal Small Brawl being intended for younger gamers. He was replaced as the end boss by Peacemeal. Now, is that I don't know about that last part, if that's true or not, that he specifically was replaced, because I don't remember if you said that he was going to be the final boss or the mid boss, because I could have sworn you said Trapper was the one who replaced Minion.
Yeah, so that one's a bit fuzzy. It so Minion was considered early on and cut early on. So we had planned it out, but there was concerns about the whole demonic origins of him being in a kid's game. And Sony was also talking like they wanted to reserve him
Mm-hmm.
and not overexpose him in the Twisted Metal games and wanted to save him for a more serious game later on. So we ended up pulling him, which then kind of left a vacuum. I want to say he might have been the end boss
Oh,
for this, but I also think I found some notes that said he was the mid boss, so it's a bit fuzzy there. But either way, him being pulled meant that Piecemeal was then pulled from being a special kind of discoverable character to being a boss
yeah.
within the game itself. But Trapper himself, I found some notes too where he and mine were always planned early on, but more as discoverable characters than bosses, and they just kind of evolved into that as we were
Mhm.
building the game itself, and characters were getting cut and pulled or rearranged in some particular manner. So that one's still lost to time until I read through some emails and some documents here, but I do feel like he was going to be the end boss on this one.
I gotcha. That would have made sense. I suppose it would have been a cool homage to TM1, because that was the last game where he was the final boss. But
Yeah.
it's also funny, like, it makes sense why he was cut, because he's a demon, and you were trying your hardest to make it towards children, but the game still is still launched at a T rating, the same rating as all the other Twist Metals except for Black. So it's just kind of like, at that point, if they rated it, the ESRB gave it a T rating, they should have just let you put Minion in the game anyway, like as a secret unlockable or something. But I suppose they don't really know the ratings until after the game launches, right?
Yeah, I mean, the standards they change every year, so I don't know what triggered it to actually be a teen rating at that point, but that was a bit disappointing considering how much we watered down the franchise to
Yeah.
kind of make it kid friendly. So that was a bit of a shocker. Kind of a previous note too. Calypso was entertained initially as being Piecemeal, being the
Oh.
final boss, but concept art came up of a Piecemeal, and we actually decided to make him a separate character. So I do have a piece of what Piecemeal really looks like in a concept art as a character,
Cool.
which will be an interesting reveal in the future. But yeah, Calypso being such a heavy part of this game, he was actually considered being a boss contestant at the end.
And what's really weird is because, like, in my own head canon growing up, I always assumed Piecemeal was Calypso's like RC car, because every other game it really wouldn't make sense for Calypso to be the final character to fight, because if you kill him, then who's granting you the wish? But in this situation, it would make sense if Calypso was the one driving the final vehicle, because he's the one that he's hosting the contest. But now knowing that Piecemeal is its own character altogether, that's really interesting, because it can add some lore to it. Or like, if you ever were able to make a sequel to Small Brawl, you could have kind of capitalized on that and like brought that character back, kind of thing, or like had a prequel to like how did Piecemeal become the final boss, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a neat concept too that he's now piecing together his vehicle from all the defeated contestants. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a cool thing for Calypso, at least in this universe.
Right. And even though like the battle is we've all kind of talked about this at the end. The final fight with Peacemeal is long-winded, and it can become kind of a drag, especially on hard. I still like the idea of it. I think it's really cool that you kill one of the main regular people, they all disappear and they fly into this mist, and then out comes Peacemeal. Because I remember as a kid, it scared the absolute shit out of me when Peacemeal arrived. Because I was like, oh, the final battle is just regular cars in a movie theater. I guess it's kind of cool, but I was used to at that point in time. Where's Primeval? Where's Sweet Tooth from TM4? Where's Minion? Whatever. And then Peacemeal comes out, and he's this gigantic force of nature that destroys all the seats running after you. So I always like the design of Peacemeal and the design of that level, but it's just it did end up getting a little bit too long-winded the more you play through it.
Yeah, he was an unfinished boss. There's a lot of pieces missing to him. We had to redo the entire movie theater he was in, including like cutting a bunch of the fire extinguisher environmentals in there, but also just how he functioned in general. The level was going to be bigger and had some more hiding spots in it, but ultimately we just didn't have enough time to tune him before launch. So
Yeah,
he is not the most balanced boss.
About that final boss with Peacemeal, I had the fortune of playing the game for the first time on a Discord stream where Goodrich was there to kind of supervise me, make sure I'm doing things the right way. But he encouraged me to shoot that fire extinguisher in the movie theater, and it took about 30 hours or so, but eventually I got it. But the fire extinguisher, it never made contact with Peacemeal, and every time I've tried since then, it will not connect ever. I can hit the fire extinguisher like just fine, it just never finds its target. So I'm convinced, Goodrich, that you are playing a prank on me. That it's impossible. It can never be done.
Well, it doesn't hit the enemy; it just flies around them, and I think it's like the mist coming out of it was damaging them.
Interesting.
No,
I
I'm
was
pretty
under the
sure it has
impression
to hit.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Oh.
like I'm pretty sure it's Spectre's ghosts. Like if the target is too small for its turn radius, it'll just circle them without hitting them. But Peacemeal is big enough to hit, but it only seeks him if he's around the stage area, and that was like a major flaw.
Oh.
But when that environmental was created, there was actually I think 4, maybe 8 of those fire extinguishers in the level by each door, and much lower and easier to hit. But because the particles in them for PS1 was too much for the PS1, it would crash the game. So we had to take them all out, and I begged them to keep in 1 just to prove we actually had put in environmental in that level.
Yeah.
And we kept it in there and raised it so it was impossible to hit. But it will kill Peacemeal 10% of the time, and the other 90% it just misses and circles around and does stupid shit for some reason.
Oh wow. I don't think. What's weird is every time I've done it, I've never had it miss. I guess like it's always done damage. So that's why I was like, what?
Yeah, it must
So
be
you're the
nice.
opposite end?
I guess
Yeah.
so. I'm just lucky. I don't know.
I did capture video where it actually broke Peacemeal apart. Like it took his last bit of health and killed him pretty
Yeah.
quickly. But it's got to be at the right spot in the level. And I don't know why it ended up that way.
Hmm.
It has to. Small Brawl seeking weapons have some major flaws in it, and I don't know why that happened. It's probably because of the development cycle, but
Yeah.
we're pretty egregious when it comes to that stuff.
It was all by design. Just
It's by design. It's all by bugs.
there's no bugs. It's design. It's meant to be. The last thing I had written here from the wiki. This is a kind of a long blurb, but it had your name in it, so I had to write it down. It says according to art, they put you as just art director, by the way. According to art director Dave Goodrich, the characters of Twisted Metal Small Brawl were also going to be featured in a third-person shooting game with paintball guns and paint bombs and gameplay similar to Quake, titled The Paint Brawl, which was ultimately canceled. Can't speak. Goodrich also claimed that Small Brawl's development was rushed towards the end, resulting in a considerable amount of cut content, explaining why many of the unlockable cars lack drivers or endings, which that part, of course, we all know is true, but I was curious to hear more about the paintball thing.
All true. I have the Paint Brawl document. Yes, the character designs for Small Brawl were so good and loved even by Sony that they wanted to continue them on into a new universe. So I
Ooh.
created a entire Quake / Unreal-esque, basically third-person shooter game, first or third person, depending on how you want to do the camera, running around an empty amusement park with different levels, like an underwater aquarium level, a haunted house level, a sci-fi level where gravity was like reduced, but it was all tied into Calypso owning this abandoned amusement park with all these different levels, and the kids would basically have a paintball war because obviously we didn't want to have real weapons for kids.
Yeah.
And they were aged up a little bit to be more teenagers. It was a really cool design. We built a bunch of levels, had a bunch of new mechanics. I had some really neat, and I want to say first of their kind mechanics where we had like vision mechanics. Depending on what your perception was, you could see different characters or could not see them, whether they were hiding or not. It would, change their opacity or transparency within the level. So if they're holding still in a dark area, you might not be able to see them. But also things like being able to hear them. So we had a whole hearing radar where if they're running around and making a lot of noise and shooting, you would get like an arrow pointing off behind you, kind of indicating like there's heavy foot traffic there, or you could try to sneak up on somebody and not appear on their radar at all. But it was like a 360 hearing radar. And then we had a bunch of like paintball weapons, snipers, paint grenades. Shit, it might have been the first Splatoon, as far as I know, as far as this goes. But yeah, it was a kid-friendly Quake version console game for Sony in the Small Brawl universe.
That's super cool. And yeah, like I was thinking that right away. I'm like, wait, did Dave like unintentionally create Splatoon before Nintendo did? Like that would have been crazy.
That would have been crazy, but it did not have area control in it. But there was a lot of neat things in it. It had some cool stuff like, a lot of the small brawl weapons, but turned into paintball weapons. You could leave like a explosive paintball mine for somebody to run across, and then it would like cover them. We had the same scoring for like paintball matches. Like you could have a certain amount of hits or a certain amount of coverage on your body before it considered all your health gone and you lost the match and things like that.
That's awesome, man. I honestly wish we could have gotten that because that would have been fun. Was it? Was this like all concept stage, or did you actually see a gameplay of this? Like you made it into actual code and everything?
It got to, I want to say, early past concept. So we had characters mapped out, levels mapped out, all the mechanics. We'd started building the levels in 3D and started to put them into the engine, but it was canceled shortly after that.
Oh man. I wonder if
it didn't get super far. I want to say maybe 6 months in development, and then they cut it. And then that's when they started kind of poking around like, hey, how about Twisted Metal World, where it's like getting in and out of cars and switching characters, so Sweet Tooth could drive a motorcycle, or Sweet Tooth could get into a truck, or, a semi-truck or things like that. And they were looking for a battle royale design for car combat. I want to say back in 2003 is when that started to come about.
Wow.
So Paint Brawl got canceled, and then we started dabbling in Twisted Metal World, which was, I think, going to be the first battle royale car combat game back in the day. But then that ended up getting canceled too because the technology just wasn't there to support it.
Damn. Twisted Metal could have been Fortnite.
Could have been Fortnite.
Way back in the day. So this must have been around the development. This is crazy to think. So, because they were making Harbor City, Head On, and this Worlds at the same time. Like they were all trying to do like 3 different projects at once.
Harbor City and Head On. No, this was 2003 that this was happening. Like Harbor City and Head On happened 10 years later?
No. That was around like 2004.
Yeah, that's when those early builds of Head On are. They're from 2004.
Yeah.
Interesting. because I left
extra
in
Twisted Edition.
2003 and I didn't look back at
Okay.
that point. I didn't realize they were doing Harbor City and Head On at
Yeah.
that early in development. I thought that was many years later after I left.
No. So like in 2008, they released the extra Twisted edition of Head On, which was a port from the PSP version of Head On. I think originally came out in what was that, guys? Like 2005, 2006?
Yeah, it's 2005 on the PSP, I'm pretty sure.
And in the extra Twisted edition that came out in 2008, they included some stuff about Harbor City, like the lost levels and stuff. And that was all from a early beta build, basically, that was in like 2004, 2005 range. So that's really interesting to me that in 2003, they were coming to you guys about this Twisted Metal Worlds kind of section, or like this idea, when at the same time, they were already, having David Jaffe and his team working on Harbor City, and then they scrapped that to make Head On really fast, because I think they used the engine from Harbor City to make Head On. So
it was Scott, not David.
Oh, that's right. So
yeah.
It was, wasn't David working on Harbor City?
He's on
and
God of
Scott
War.
Was on.
Yeah, he was still God of War.
Yeah, he was on God of War at that point.
Yeah, that's interesting, because like one of the stories of how I inherited Small Brawl and Twisted Metal Black Online was I joined the team and I had a conversation with Jaffe in passing up at Incog, and he's just like, they'd finished Twisted Metal Black, and obviously, I mean, it's no secret, Scott and Jaffe weren't talking anymore. Jaffe kind of pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I'm glad you're taking over, Twisted Metal. I'm completely burned out on the series and I don't have any ideas left. And, I want to go off and work on God of War. Like, I want to go recharge my batteries on this."
Sure.
And heard a similar story from like Scott and the North team, where they're just like, we're burned out on Twisted Metal. We don't want to make another one of these anytime soon. We're gonna go do Downhill Domination and War of the Monsters and
great game.
God, I want to say maybe Warhawk was in there, or that might have actually been before that.
Yeah.
But from what I heard from them, they were like done with Twisted Metal. And that's when I inherited Small Brawl and Black Online, and then started dabbling in Paint Brawl and Twisted Metal World. So it's odd that like a year after I left, that they're delving right back into revitalizing a new Twisted Metal franchise. So that I was not aware of.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say about like even Scott Campbell's team was kind of like, we're kind of done with TM, because you can really tell that in Head On, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like
you can
really...
it looks like manufactured like corporate trash is what Head On is basically. It's just like, what did Twisted Metal 2 do? Oh, let's just do that again.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that's like what Head On comes off as, like a really just like transparent, like, let's try to make this to sell Twisted Metal, I guess.
Right. It kind of feels like an AI generated TM game. Like,
I mean, I don't blame them. Like, it's tough to really go in and grind out a game, but everything I heard from that team was just like, I never want to touch another Twisted Metal game again.
Yeah.
Like, we made
knowing
it,
that
we
explains
established our
a lot.
company.
Mm-hmm.
It really does.
Yeah. So I mean, they wanted to do their own stuff from then on. It's just like, we want to make our own IPs. So they must have been hurting for money if they had to go back to the Twisted Metal franchise, which, I mean, I'm always happy to do, but it sounded like they were done with it.
Yeah. And I can understand why. Like they made TM1 and 2, and then they all split up, and then 99 took over for 3 and 4. And they came back and they made this basically like their baby of TM Black. Like they put their heart and soul, like everything into that. And then they were like, this should be the final one. Like they were done. And then, like you said, I think it probably was money related. Who knows? But Sony was like, hey, car combat, we still want to keep in the realm, in the world. And also we want to sell more PSP units. So let's make a first party game on it. Let's bring Twisted Metal on the PSP, which I think is genius. I think that made sense. It's what got me to buy a PSP, was to play Head On. But it's just a shame that Head On itself really feels like, coming back to it to this day, like I had a fun time with it back in the day on my PSP. I liked it. But when you look at it objectively compared to all the other games in the series, it really like when you said it, like they were done with Twisted Metal, that makes the most sense to me. Like it just feels like not a cash grab, but just there's no love in it. There's no I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it's
It's like a soulless
a
game.
passion project. Yeah, it just feels like all right, we know what we're doing. Let's go use this engine, just throw it together.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Going through
Here's
the
a game.
motions. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting because they must have needed the money if they went to PSP.
Mhm.
Sony was trying to push that new handheld on everybody who they were dealing with. The whole reason, like, I ended up working on Ratchet and Clank Size Matters is because, and actually Jack and Daxter Lost Frontier,
Yep.
is because Insomniac and Naughty Dog, who are both first party Sony, said they wouldn't touch that. Like, there was not enough of a user base in there. There
Wow.
wasn't enough sales in it that the amount of effort they were going to put into that, they wouldn't make their money back.
Mm.
And they felt it was going to hurt their reputation going from these golden masterpieces on like PS1, PS2, PS3, whatever, to a handheld where they had to kind of like step back in the graphics, step back in the gameplay to some extent, because making good camera controls on something as limited as a PSP,
Yeah.
they didn't want to do it. That's the whole reason like Daxter went to Ready at Dawn, and Ratchet and Clank and Jack and Daxter went to High Impact Games, which are both what I worked on.
Mhm.
But it was all basically to push this unit for for what Sony's next initiative was, but also only companies that really needed money actually picked up the PSP, which really makes me think that's what happened with
Head On.
being on PSP.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. And it's kind of sad too because in my opinion, I think the PSP was ahead of its time. I think like the hardware that was in that thing, like you think about it, like it's actually insane like how much stuff was packed in that little device. And granted it was expensive for the time. I mean, that's why the DS was outselling it like crazy because it was so much cheaper. It had more games at its disposal. The accessories are way cheaper for the DS, where the PSP was like we have to use a proprietary memory card that costs like $80 for like 4 GB of space. In the end, then the UMDs would break really easily. There was issues with it, but I still love the PSP. I think it definitely didn't get enough love that it really deserved, and it sounds like the developers also kind of looked at it like, oh, it's a handheld. They were looking at it like a Game Boy, where it's a really cheap like knockoff version of a home console that I'm not going to waste my time on it. But there were some games on the PSP that I felt honestly rivaled some of the PS2 versions. So I don't know. I felt like
it really shocks me that they see it that way. I mean, the DS is the most sold console of all time.
yeah.
So I don't know why they would see it that way. I mean, like maybe they didn't realize it yet, but like I'm pretty sure the DS was even like really, really popular even at that time.
Yeah,
I'm
Right.
shocked
definitely
they would
was.
even see it that way.
Mhm.
I don't want to diss the PSP. Like, it was an amazing piece of hardware, and I thought it was really cool. I'm just looking at like the position of these companies, like the really
Right.
established ones, like Insomniac and Naughty Dog. It's just like we build our audience on these consoles.
Yeah.
We have a very high standard here. We're not going to step back and say, hey, you also now you have to go buy a PSP to enjoy our titles.
Yeah.
So I think that was also part of their decision. It's just like, we're not going to require you to buy a complete, new system handheld for hundreds of dollars in order to play a title that does not quite look as good,
Mhm.
or may not be the quality of what we could offer on the current console at the time. And I don't
Yeah.
think they wanted to do that to their audience. And I don't think the the money or the amount of money they would have made on sales was going to recoup their losses, as far as being able to develop that. And that was
Yeah.
another major decision.
Yeah, it's wild like how much changed with the handheld gaming after the DS and the PSP came out. Because yeah, like Kong said, I mean they definitely sold like hotcakes and they made a lot of money. So I bet those developers who decided not to make a game for it maybe kind of were kicking themselves later down the road. Like maybe we should have, because it could have sold a lot. You never know. But
Okay, I need to look at what the PSP's sales was.
it definitely
I'm
wasn't.
pretty sure it was really good actually, I think.
I don't know. I honestly, I thought I heard rumors it was a failure. Like it kind of.
They were good for handhelds. I think there was only a couple that made big bucks. Like Daxter broke over 1 million. Ratchet Clank size batters, I think, got close to 1 million, if not 1 million.
Wow.
Everything else kind of didn't do too great. Oh, and God of War, I think, what was it? Chains of Olympus was another one that did pretty well.
It's 11th on all selling consoles of all time.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and I've made a mistake with the DS. DS is number 2. PlayStation 2 is number 1.
Oh wow.
Only by 1 million more, but
only 1 million.
Yeah, 155
Million's a
million for
lot.
PS2. It says that the PlayStation Portable's estimated sales is 80 to 82 million.
Okay, that's more than I thought.
Units.
I thought the PSP didn't sell at all. Maybe I'm thinking of the Vita, and then the Vita flopped.
Yes, the Vita was the one that was bad.
But the actual console itself, the Vita was awesome, very underrated. But it just didn't have games. Then probably the same thing Goodrich brought up is like the developers probably looked at the Vita and they were like, well, the PS3's out now. I'll waste my time with the Vita. I can just make a PS3 game. But I don't know. But I guess kind of cycling back to Small Brawl a little bit. We already talked about the level design. I think we maybe kind of fun to go through each one of our favorite levels. Just kind of talk about like what makes those levels our favorite in the game and like what we liked about it the most. I've talked about this many times. Carnival is my favorite. I just always love the carnival aesthetic of games or levels in Twisted Metal games. And yeah, Carnival it hits everything for me. I love the color palette. I love the soundtrack. I like the big skull guy that goes through the level that can run you over and kill you or run over enemies. And if you shoot it, it gives you an extra health, which is kind of a cool little secret. And then you got like the trap doors that can open up to go down in the secret area where the skull guy spawns. There's the giant like tilt-a-whirl thing that you sit on it and it spins. And actually, it wasn't until later in life that I realized if you sit on it long enough, it keeps going faster and faster. It doesn't hurt you, which I thought it did for some reason in my mind. But testing it later on, like recently I tested it, it does not hurt you if you fly off it. But it's still kind of a funny little thing, like a little Easter egg, I guess. Then you got the buzzsaw you can throw people into if you're Mr. Slam, which is pretty cool. But all around, yeah, I love that level. It's a lot of fun. The only thing is, I think it's one of the only levels in the game that doesn't have an environmental like weapon, right? If except unless you count the buzzsaw.
No, it doesn't. It does. Carnival doesn't have an environmental weapon.
Yeah, it's the only one I think in the game that doesn't have one, other than the
But
last level.
Playground Peril doesn't have it, and neither does.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
No Slang.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have hazards, but not environmental weapons.
Yeah, it doesn't really need it though, to be honest. Unless you maybe the only thing I think of is like you could have made the skull guy act like the lawnmower, maybe in
Right.
Iron Gore, where he runs after somebody if you like hit a button. But I feel like that would have been broken.
Wouldn't have been able to get through. The level would have had to been bigger for him to go through. I
Yeah.
think.
Mm.
So I think he is too big.
Mm-hmm. Imagine that thing like running up the ramp after you. That'd be scary as hell.
Yeah, it would be.
But winners, I'm curious since you're new to the game. What out of your opinion? I know you're already. I'm gonna make a wild guess. It's probably the treetop level. But what's your favorite level in Small Brawl?
Yeah, I like Treetop just because I like going to the damn lawnmower and just shooting the back of it so that way it can get going and start traveling around the map. I think I found out very early on that something I like to do every time I play through a level is just get the lawnmower going and then open up that little hatch that's on
Yeah.
the other side and just kind of like make the lawnmower fall. I don't know why. It's completely irrelevant. It's like you gotta destroy all the other cars, and I'm like, fuck this lawnmower. I just want it to fall down.
I think it's
Hopefully,
cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. I never really see it do all that much damage. Then again, I'm playing on hard mode all the time.
Yeah.
But it just I like doing it just for shits and giggles. Just shoot the lawnmower, just follow it, and then make it fall.
Did you notice that we put a cat scream at the bottom when the lawnmower drops down the hatch?
It's been a while, but when I played, I probably did. Although I did find out that there is a glitch to the level apparently.
Talking about with the shadow.
Yeah, the unlimited special shadow glitch, whatever that is. I
That's
can't
the
remember who
best
mentioned
glitch
it
of
to
all
me.
time, man.
I have a hard time recreating it, but I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But what I do appreciate about that level though is like, even if you fall down, like you can still bounce back up and like go back into the level but like not in the same location you fall, but from different like kind of sections.
Yeah.
And so it's like really it's a really neat feature to use to kind of get out of like dicey situations.
Mm-hmm.
Just again because up until that point, every Twisted Metal so far, you fall down, that's it, game over, GG. But this level was the first level to kind of change that and utilize it into, a way to kind of strategize how you want to go around and taking on different cars or running away from the different cars.
Yeah.
Yeah. I added that in the trampoline in the center to make it an easier rooftops level, simply because we had like a 12-year-old audience that we were aiming the product for. So we didn't want to be overly brutal with what we were doing with a lot of the level design, but we wanted a rooftop type level in there. So this was kind of our solution to kind of meet both of those goals.
Yeah, I definitely think it works. Just because, I mean, if I was a kid and I was playing that and I'm falling down all the time, which
Mhm.
kids, they're not the best at playing video games. Um, I would probably just be pissed off all the time and just crying and screaming at my TV. But I think it works. I think it's cool. Just again, it hasn't really been done at any other point in the series.
Right. And what about you, Drew? As a new player to Small Brawl, what was what level stuck out to you the most?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's the basic bitch answer, but I love Playground Peril. I think that it embodies everything that Small Brawl wants to be as a piece of creative content. Everywhere you turn, there's something destructible or interactable, or
Mhm.
there's all these little details to it that I don't think Twisted Metal has ever been this, I don't know, delightful and creative, where the swing set off in the distance, there's a lockable character there, there's pickups you can get there, the seesaw, you drive up and down it, it moves with you, the tire can be set on fire, there's a kid on a merry-go-round like just outside the map that you can launch him into outer fucking space if you hit him just right. And
Yep.
the duck, of course, is like I will worship that duck till the day I die. It's possible to I guess destroy the duck, but I will never find out because I'll never harm the
Shooting
duck.
napalms at it.
Yep.
I will fight to the death to protect that duck.
Turns into a cooked turkey.
Yeah, it's just super creative and just super. It's super everything that Small Brawl sets out to be. It feels like a proof of concept that, hey, this is a good idea that we're doing what we're doing here with this game, and I just love everything about it. And it's also
Yeah.
it's the first level, which I think is the perfect spot for it. Like I wouldn't want it to be anywhere else.
It hits right.
Yeah. It gets you into the mood of the game, and I like that you can also unlock Axel on that level, especially in the swing set in the distance. And
Right.
the other thing too that was kind of interesting is the other day somebody in the Discord was able to strip the files from Small Brawl. I don't know how, but they have a program where they're able to like look at it in 3D and stuff. And they had the duck in their 3D program, and they were like, "Wait, what the hell? Why does the duck have like two layers? Like, what's this layer underneath it?" And it was like the in the shape of the cooked turkey version of it, but it still had
Yeah.
the texture of the regular like yellow duck.
Oh,
So
it's
they
so
were like,
cursed.
yeah, so it looked really fucking bad. And they were like, they're like, why does it have the legs sticking out like this? Like, what is those bones or something? And I replied, I'm like, did you know that if you hit the duck in the game with a napalm, it turns into like a fried or like a cooked duck, like a turkey almost. And they were like, oh my god, I never knew that. Like out of the 10,
Really?
15 years I played this game, that yeah, they never knew that. And I was like, yeah. So you learn something new every day with this game.
Yeah, I mean, as a new player, the second level, the one with the skeleton that kind of travels around.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know how I kept waiting for that damn skeleton for so long. I'm like, I know there's a fucking health back there. I don't know how to get there. I'm just gonna wait for it to open up and wait for this goddamn skeleton
Yeah.
until somebody, I think I can't remember who. I think it was one of you guys. and I was like, they're like, oh yeah, no, you can get back there by just going through that door. I'm like, wait, that's a door
Mm-hmm.
to go back into the level. I'm like, oh shit, but like you have to be careful because I believe there's like it's like I can't remember what it is, but it's like some prop that chases you, and if it gets you, it'll just take like a lot of damage out of you.
The
I can't.
the skeleton
The
guy.
skeleton comes through. He can trap you in the
Yeah.
corner. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, oh shit, and like, it's like
He'll
I'm
mess
just
you
trying to
up.
get the health. Don't yeah, it's like don't mind me. I'm just trying to grab a health here. But if you're gonna fuck me up, I guess I'll just go fuck off then.
You can also shoot him for another health too.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh shit. Yeah, I guess I'm finding more things out every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, there's a lot of secrets like that in the levels.
Yeah, I need that Goodrich strategy guide.
Yeah, that small brawl strategy guide.
Yeah.
If
One day.
only. One day.
One day I'll make that.
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah,
sweet.
it just seems like there's so much in the game that, again, being a newer player, I'm like especially like unlocking the characters or
Yeah.
especially the one level, the kitchen where you gotta like shoot the fat guys, ass cheeks or something like that for him to shart and blow up your counter. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It does feel like all these levels they're so dynamic and they feel alive in a way that I don't know if I really would say about any other Twisted Metal game. Like just see the way things move around. It feels alive and vibrant. Even the most boring quote unquote level, Iron Gore, there's still that lawnmower driving around. It feels dynamic. Where I think there's a lot of static levels elsewhere in the series.
And the sounds of the crowd too, I think add a lot to it. Like if you get frozen
Yeah.
and you have to like jump, your car kind of like jumps and there's 3 layers to the freeze. You hear the crowd like cheering for each time the freeze gets less and less.
Right, or you use your shield and the crowd will chant defense, defense.
Yep.
Like it's just it's like just cool little nuances and details that make the game feel cared about and loved.
I totally forgot I added that in. Like I saw someone playing it on the Discord, and I was just like, "Oh my god, that's right! We had different chants for every action you had in there, or the cheer every time you killed somebody."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like the crowd goes wild. Like
It's just-
yeah, that was a good time making this game for sure.
Yeah, it's little
It just
details
makes you
like that
excited
that
to
really
load
add up.
any level. Yeah.
What about Kong? What was your favorite level?
Easy Death Oven.
Hell yeah.
That's always been my favorite. I always like to mess around with the microwave and trap enemies inside of it. That was always my favorite thing to do as a kid. Like I love that. I mean, the environmental is kind of useless. Like the enemies need to be in a certain spot
The
for
ice
it to actually
cubes.
work properly.
Ice cubes.
But I just think the microwave is just a lot of fun to play around with, especially or getting enemies trapped in the can opener.
Oh yeah.
I
That
got
as
caught
well.
in that fucking can opener way too many times.
Yeah, I
Is
know.
the
Me
stove
too.
an environmental weapon? Is it just like an interval? It just like rotates. Which ones are heated?
What?
The
The-
stove.
It's on a timer, and so
Yeah,
it just goes on its own.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
random.
Yeah, I always thought it was like an enemy controlling it because it feels like every time I pass over it, I'm engulfed in flames. Yeah, I guess I'm just bad at the game.
Just gotta time it, yeah.
Yeah,
Or
I
we
can't hit the
didn't time
fire
it.
extinguisher, and I can't avoid the fury of flames.
There you go.
So, Goodrich, you've designed a game that hates me, yet I love it so much.
Probably. It probably hates you.
Yeah, Easy Death Oven's got a lot of great little features to it that I've always liked as a kid too, especially the plumber shooting him in the ass. Creates like a giant fireball that opens another section of the level. It's just like you can't beat that. Like that's just amazing.
Yeah,
I can't
it
think of
was-
another game that opens an area because of a fart, like an atomic fart. That is a small brawl exclusive.
That is.
Yeah, I
Indeed.
remember when I was playing that level, I was so confused. Somebody's like, "Shoot the napalm, shoot the napalm." I'm like, what?
Shoot his ass.
They're like, "Yeah, shoot his ass." I'm like, okay. And like, I struggled, but then when I finally got it, I'm like, oh shit! Like, man, he was holding it in.
That
Well, I
poor
like that his
man.
ass isn't very picky. Like you can really shoot anything in there and it goes off, which I really
Really?
appreciate. Unlike pretty much.
Oh shit! Okay.
I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Unlike
if it-
Axel at Twisted Metal Black, where you need to have like a very specific weapon, like the planets need to align a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be very lucky. But that plumber's asshole, very, very unpicky.
Yeah, he's kind of like the Death Star. You got to hit the vent with anything, and then it just blows at that point.
I wonder if
God.
not I wonder, but I wish there was a way that the game could record and upload like like a statistic to the internet to see over the years since its inception to today how many times the plumber's asshole has been like exploded with napalm by players.
It's like a 100% clip. I don't think anyone's played that level without blasting
Right.
that dude's asshole.
Yeah, it's like you got it. It's
And
like
it's helpful. It gives you a health and power missiles as well.
Yeah, and dark side.
Mm-hmm. Which he wasn't going to be under there. Like he was going to be a main character.
Mhm.
So was Axel. So was Grasshopper. So yeah, once we started cutting characters and had to scramble some of them because we couldn't make endings for them, we were finding any place to hide characters on, the various levels. But a fun fact, or interesting tidbit or rumor about the plumber is I keep seeing everybody saying like, "Oh, Jaffe says that he came up with a plumber idea and he put it in the game and all this stuff," which I'm not saying he didn't, but I never had a single conversation with him about the plumber or anything. Like once I took over, started Small Brawl, I actually never had any interaction with him, so I don't know if it was his idea, how it would have made it into the game.
Yeah.
So I found that as an interesting tidbit. So maybe it came through one of his producers, but I don't remember that ever happening.
And it could have been a coincidence that both of you came up with the idea separately without knowing it.
That's true.
That
I did
happens.
find the original level design for that, and the plumber was not in it. I actually had a flooded kitchen where the water that was on the ground was basically electrified from a frayed wire, and cars had to avoid that. And there were some extra hazards in there that did not end up in the original game. So I honestly don't remember where the plumber came from, but I don't ever recall or found an email where I had a discussion with Sony about putting it in there. So
Okay.
it is a bit of a mystery.
He just
I guess Jaffe made it. Some would say he could make games from thousands of miles away.
According to Scott Campbell, yes.
Yes. He's done it again, folks. That's awesome.
He beamed his genius into the Mormons of Utah to make the most fantastic game.
Oh god. And out of curiosity, Goodrich, what is your favorite level in the game?
Oh gosh.
I know it's kind of like picking your children, but
it is, but it gets easier. It's going to be within the secret levels because we had more experience and understanding of the levels.
Yeah.
At that point to kind of push them further. I want to say Buster's Lanes is probably one of my favorite levels because we got in like a bowling mini game and we had some great level flow. It looked really good. The secret underneath Buster's Lanes, like that secret area, doesn't do much, but it's still pretty cool. Like,
yeah,
overall, that level flows really well and looks really good. I like the Mad Scientist level 2 quite a bit, and then also Holiday Havoc, which was a lot of fun. I thought was really great.
Yeah,
like those three, but I think Buster's Lanes, which is originally called Ball Busters, is probably my favorite level.
I wonder. I'm actually kind of curious about this if you would remember at all. But I know how you said the game technically would not have had locked characters except for Peacemeal and Trapper if it wasn't for the exclusion of Axel's ending. With the levels, the 3 levels that are secret, were those always planned to be secret levels, or were those just like the tournament was too long or something, so you had to remove those 3?
No, I found something in my design docs that said they were actually part of the original rotation.
Wow.
So the game was going to be longer. And we ended up, and I don't know why, I got to look at my notes more, but we ended up moving them to being secret locations. And I think it's simply because we wanted to have something for kids to work towards and unlock in the game itself.
That makes sense because you added the endurance mode, which I think I said this in the previous video or previous episode, but it's true. Like endurance mode, I played a crap ton as a kid. And I didn't even realize until probably years later. Like I was bad at the game, so I would never get past like 5 characters or 6 characters until I died. But I remember like eventually I got good enough to where I passed, I think it's 10 characters you unlock Holiday Havoc, and then it's like 15 you get Busters.
No, it's 10.
Is it 10?
10, 20, and 30, yeah.
10, 20,
'Cause I
30.
remember
Oh, wow,
as a
it's a lot
kid,
more than I thought. Okay.
That's how I figured out the trick of playing a slam and throwing the enemies off the side of Treetop Rumble.
Yeah, that's one way to cheese it.
Because you have to kill 30 enemies, and I couldn't do it as a kid, so I figured that out.
Right.
Yeah, and you could cheese it and just throw everyone off the map. Or
That's
play
wild.
Twister and do the same thing.
Yeah, Twister, we did something interesting with her where she will always throw them away from the trampoline if you use her. So she never throws them into the safe zone. Like if you use Twister, they're always going off the edge of treetops.
Yep. And you can suck up multiple people at once, so you can get like quad kills if you're good enough. I've done it once before, and it felt amazing. But yeah, I thought that was cool. Like even as a kid, I was like, oh shit, you can unlock these secret levels just by playing the game, basically, by doing this extra mode that has nothing to do with the tournament. So I can kind of understand from a development standpoint of like you wanted an extra reason to go into these other game modes, other than just, oh, you beat the tournament, here's some extra content kind of thing. But I always thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I found some crazy designs where as you unlock characters, they would start to appear as enemies in your playthroughs. Otherwise, they wouldn't. Like if you unlock Mime, she would appear as an enemy, but otherwise, if you hadn't, she wouldn't. And it looked like I had some ideas around the same with the levels. Like if you unlocked Buster's lanes, that would now appear as part of the level rotation via playthrough. And it looks like it got scrapped early on, but there was a couple ideas in there as far as this went, where it's like, no, actually, Buster's lanes and the Mad Scientist level are part of the full playthrough, so it was going to be a longer game.
Yeah.
But we needed secrets, so it looks like at the last minute we actually pulled them and made them secret levels. So,
damn,
it seems to have worked out in the end.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean,
cool.
and yeah, they're worth it. You know, they're worth unlocking because they're great levels. Like imagine if you would have put those amazing levels in the main tournament, but you took out like Iron Gore and made that one a secret level. I feel like that would have been like not as like, I don't know what's the word. It wouldn't have felt as good to unlock because it's not like a huge, oh wow, this is crazy cool, you know.
You don't want to kill 50 characters to unlock Iron Gore.
No,
masterpiece of a level.
Exactly. I would have been like, what happened?
So the people that don't know, like, since they're ragging on Iron Gore, like, what is the story of like how that level got implemented, since it's vastly different from all the rest?
Okay, so the Sony producer we were working with, who was kind of like Jaffe's, right-hand guy on this project, he, I think I want to say halfway through development, just said, hey, you know what? I'm a producer, but I would like to try my hand at design. I want to make a level. And I was like, okay. And he's like, okay, I got a great one. And he pitched it, and it's basically Holland.
Yep.
Completely flat, nothing in it. And I mean, I kind of pride myself on my level designs. I'm pretty good at it. And I was just like, why do you want this completely flat level? Like this is your chance to actually put a design in a game, like for a level design. And he's like, I think Holland's the best level that was ever made. I'm like, wow.
Oh, no.
Sounds like a YouTube commenter.
Legit. Like, wow. So we put it in, humoring him because, I mean, it's Sony and we can only push back so much.
Yeah.
And he put it in, and it's just the flattest, most boring level ever. So I had to work on him for like a month saying, hey, can we add this? Can we do this? So I got in like the football helmets and the benches on the sides to just add a little bit of geometry in there and visual interest. And then my biggest push was getting the environmental of the lawnmower guy in there. just so that there was something that the players could interact with and kind of use in what was essentially a very empty level.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you couldn't hide. There was no interesting elevations. The level was way too big for what we were doing, and I realized that early on, like that level needed twice the amount of enemies in it to make it, feel filled out.
Right.
But even then, like as you killed out enemies, it was just gonna feel empty again. So I wanted to add something with motion and a little bit of something that was dynamic in the level. So that's where the lawnmower guy came in. And we also had like a bunch of beer bottles all over the level too, which I added for visual interest. But for some reason, Sony's just like, oh, we can't have this guy passed out drunk in the level. So pull all the beer bottles. And I was like, okay, whatever. And we
but yeah,
actually
you kept
ended
in
up
the
using them
pixel-
in Buster's Lanes instead.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because it was a hidden level, so we could put him in there. That wasn't part of the mid game or the main game.
Oh,
So
okay.
this was his ode to Twisted Metal, 1 and 2 having like a Holland-esque flat level, but I didn't feel like it was good enough for what we were doing with Small Brawl.
Yeah.
So I added a bunch of elements to kind of spice it up a bit. So that is where that level came from.
And I feel like with Iron Gore, they could have.
It's just too big.
It's
That's
too
the
big.
problem.
Way too big.
Yeah, if it was
It's
cut in
huge.
half, it wouldn't have been bad.
Yeah,
Or at least
if it was just
not as big.
inside the white lines, it would have been fine. Like the outside parts don't need to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also, I remember from playing one of the earlier builds, there's a cheat behind if you shoot those signs with napalms, there's cheats behind there
Mm-hmm.
that I think were scrapped, I guess.
Yeah, we had those cheats in all the levels. It was also on treetops. I think there was another one where if you hit signs with napalm, it would reveal like God mode and infinite weapon mode.
Yeah, killer
and,
weapons, yeah.
Yeah, and killer weapons and a bunch of other ones. And I do not to this day remember why we pulled all of that stuff. But we had to yank it for some reason. It's probably Sony was having leaks of like their confidential, materials with the games or whatever, who knows. So we had to yank all that stuff, but I like the idea of like having secrets there. So we ended up putting hints of like, here's the secret levels or here's the secret characters that you could eventually unlock. And we just swapped those in at the last minute.
Makes sense. I mean, the game still has cheat codes in it, but they're really long-winded, like 20 inputs to get God mode and shit. So maybe that's why it was scrapped, because they ended up, like, maybe originally God mode or whatever was like 5 inputs, but it was too easy to do, so people would do it by accident.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that. We might have had the very simple ones in there for actually game dev, because we don't have to do 20 inputs.
Right.
And then it was determined that, oh no, it's got to be much bigger, and there's no way we could have fit it on the textures that we had at the time. So we scrapped that. Or, I mean, something that happens in most of the games I work on is they pull that stuff so they can actually give them to magazines that review it. As a like, hey, can you put Small Brawl on the cover? We'll give you this code that nobody else knows about. And if we'd left them in the game, characters would have discovered it and it would have actually taken the wind out of magazines to be able to do that.
That'd have been cool. And yeah, it makes sense. You got to bribe them,
We've done it with almost every game we've ever made. It's the sad truth of game development.
If it works, it works. That's what I always say. But yeah, I don't know. Like, out of all the levels in the game, that's Iron Gore is the only one that sticks out to me as like meh. But that's an accomplishment, a major accomplishment, because I feel like every Twisted Metal game, even Black, like even if I love the game, there's at least like 3 levels I'm like, these could have been better. But Small Brawl for me, like throughout the entire tournament, like every level is great. It's just Iron Gore is the only one where it's kind of like, it's meh. I mean, even the movie theater, it has issues because it's very not like small, but it just there's not a whole lot going on.
Doesn't have enough weapons.
Right. That's my only issue with the last level. There's just not enough weapon pickups.
Yeah.
But I think, like you said, Dave, like you originally wanted the trash cans to have weapons come out of them if you shoot them. But I think you removed that because it was glitching out with like how Peacemeal worked or whatever.
I forget why we removed it, but yes, you could shoot the trash cans and about 1 in every 10 hits would drop out a full weapon pickup.
Yeah.
And I think it was pulled out because it gave the player too many weapons, and Sony wanted that level to be harder in general
Oh.
because it was like the last level. I think that's also why Piecemeal and Trapper end up with so many hit points. Just like, these are bosses, they should be 10 times harder. And I was like, okay, cool. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, I
sure.
mean, we had bigger plans for the movie theater. We are gonna have people in the seats, and you would drive by, and they would like stomp their feet as an environmental. We were also gonna have like sticky soda on the ground, where if you drove across it, it would slow you down or slow enemies down, kind of trapping them for a brief moment.
That would have been
And then
cool.
we had all the extra fire extinguishers in there that you could use against Piecemeal during during his fight in the various stages. The popcorn cart used to do damage to enemies when it ran into them, except it would it would it would hit them and carry them the entire length of the movie theater and kill them because it did continuous damage. So that got pulled. And then we
Damn.
also had like a secret backstage area that we were going to implement, but it never got modeled behind the movie screen where you could go behind it as kind of a cool little secret area in there. But yeah, it was just like a lot was cut because we just didn't have time to tune it or do it right. So it
Yeah.
was a very half-baked last level and boss at that point.
Yeah, it's understandable. It's just it's still fine. Like the only complaint I have is the lack of weapons, but other than that, I think it's a great fine level. I like the aesthetic. I love being in a movie theater for a level for Twisted Metal. I like that Piecemeal can destroy all the seats too, which is kind of a cool aesthetic to it. And it's by far my favorite song in the game too. Like the soundtrack bangs on every level. I don't think there's a bad song in the game at all. But that final one is my favorite song. I think you said, Dave, it's like a remix of The Matrix, which makes sense because it's a movie theater, but it's definitely a good song.
It does sound like the Matrix, doesn't it?
But yeah, those are all the things I wrote down, like the different topics of the game. Is there anything else? Anybody had any questions for Dave before we go into our ratings?
What about the concepts? Did we talk about those?
No,
Pictures?
no, we didn't actually. Yeah. So what Kong's talking about is before we started up the podcast, Dave sent us a couple tidbits, which I'm gonna edit into the video later. You'll see them on the screen here now. Just some early concept stuff never before seen of Small Brawl here, which he says that once he reaches 500 subs, he might release some more goodies for you guys. So again, wink, wink. Check out his channel, GoodrichGames. But yeah, some of these are pretty cool. Let's see, let's go through them real quick. The first one is a level or it was the concept for Mr. Grimm, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was like his wheels are huge and his body is tiny, really small. And then there was like the flip up kind of Gatling gun looking thing that was going to be a special weapon that would come up from the back, which I think is an interesting design, but I just feel that's not Mr. Grimm because he's always had that kind of power missile type special weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been interesting seeing him with Gatling guns. But you were saying that you were not a fan of this design.
I was not a fan of that design. It did not feel like a motorcycle that Grimm would ride. It felt very futuristic and bulky, almost kind of like a Robotech design in a weird way. And I was like, there was a Toys R Us, not to date myself, on the way home from Incognito South to my apartment, and I would stop by there now and then. And I found a very cool looking compact motorcycle with a character who had like a skull on his back and on the side of his car or motorcycle. And I looked at it and I'm just like, this is Mr. Grimm. It's a toy. It looks like him. It's great. And that's actually what I ended up modeling Mr. Grimm off of for Small Brawl, instead of like this giant, weird, bulky character that was presented by Sony.
Yeah.
And Sony did most of the character art under, with Lee's direction. Though I did get to direct him on a couple of things and figure out which of his designs I wanted to use for various characters. Like we did have an early Minion design that I cannot find to this day.
Oh.
But it was like a kid in a long john like devil suit with like the tail sewn on and the plastic pitchfork and the hoodie with the horns on it looked like something out of like the 1940s, like for a devil costume.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like one of the designs that got cut along with this grim concept that I shared with you guys.
That's really cool. And honestly, I think I've said this before, but I truly stand by this. I think Mr. Grimm's design in Small Brawl is probably one of my favorite versions of Grimm. I've never been a fan of the sidecar. I mean, it makes sense if you're looking at it logically because at the sidecar is where he would hide all his weapons. But I just never been a fan of the look of it. I like him where he's just a standard like hot rod, like just single motorcycle. And I love the look of Mr. Grimm in Small Brawl. I just think he looks super cool.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I never liked the sidecar design. I feel like either his friend or his dog should be riding in that, and like that's not Mr. Grimm.
Yeah.
There's
Should
like
be
a pug in his sidecar.
There you go. Or the friend he ate in Vietnam and Twisted Metal Black.
Just a pile of bones.
This is buddy, yeah, his little buddy. That's right. I could see that. And the other thing here you posted was 2 different concepts for different levels. The first one is Carnival, and the second one was Holiday Havoc. The Carnival one seems pretty true to what came out of the final game, except for the one little thing that you said originally, if you looked into the mirror, it was going to show Sweet Tooth's face, which is kind of a cool little, that would have been a funny little Easter egg. Probably would have scared me as a kid, but it would have been cool. But otherwise, the rest of the concept is pretty true to what we got in the final game, which is pretty awesome to see. That from very early concept here to actual finished product is dope that it all got in there. And then
that one stayed pretty true. And the Holiday Havoc, I'm sure you noticed, has changed quite a bit.
Yeah, that one. It seems, I think Kong pointed out, it kind of seems like it got cut in half almost.
Yeah, it's a little bit smaller. That back part, like towards the top, is not there.
Yeah.
And obviously the vacuum cleaner is not there either.
Yep. Yeah, we were kind of joking about this before the podcast that the so original concept here is that there was going to be a vacuum that would like drive around the level that could be a hazard to run you over, just like in Iron Gore with the lawnmower guy. And I was saying that like I think Dave accidentally invented the Roomba before it was ever even a concept in real life. That would have been in Small Brawl. That would have been crazy.
A good funny part of that is I ended up working for one of the creators of the Roomba on a robot like 3 years ago called Moxie.
Really?
So yeah, so I worked for one of the guys who made the Roomba, but I may have actually come up with the idea for the Roomba back in the day.
Yeah, before he even did.
Full circle.
That's wild. It's all what's the word? Like it's all meant to be. It's all the game plan. But yeah, so Holiday Havoc had a lot of differences there from the original concept to what we got in the final game. But still really cool level regardless. I still really like that level. And then you have to remind me, Dave, what this next one is. It looks like what do you call that? It's the art for Sweet Tooth's vehicle in the game.
Oh yes, it's the texture
PS2
page.
textures, right?
Yeah. No, the Sweet Tooth is I think it's the PS1 textures, but then I sent you the shadow texture page for the PS2 version.
Oh wow! So this would have been on the PS2.
Yeah, you could see it's much cleaner and not pixelated. So
yeah,
the PS1, you have to do very low level pixelated textures with a limited color palette, and where PS2 we didn't have to do as much. So you'll see the individual squares on the Sweet Tooth where you won't see it on the shadow.
Oh right, I got you. Man, that would have been cool with the shadow design. So are those 3 little squares on the left there? Or on the left there with the skulls and stuff. Were those going to be like the windows?
Yeah. So the top one I think is the sides, and then the bottom 2 are the 2 back windows on him.
Oh.
And then the purple stripes going up, where the stripes up and down basically from the top to the hood.
Okay. which
You
I
can see the
think you
grill.
carried over into the main game, into the final product too.
Yeah, a lot of it made it there, just not at this resolution.
Right.
So, oh, actually, I'm looking at Sweet Tooth here. This actually looks like the PS2 version too.
Yeah, that's what you said before. It was
It's
the
very
PS2
high res, yeah.
textures.
Because I could see a lot of gradients. It's not as crunched as what a PS1 would be. Because we got to do a much smaller size with like I think 32 colors or something like that.
Oh wow.
And then when it actually goes in the game, it gets crunched down even more. So it
Okay.
looks pretty jank.
Still looks cool though. I've always loved the design of the head, the with the hands on the side of the face, like looking scared.
It's funny. Like that's actually funny because he's holding the side of his head because I wanted him to have a brain freeze. Like he's grabbing the
Oh,
sides of his face like he like his head hurts because it's too cold and not because he's scared.
that makes sense. No, I like that. He's kind of got the blue in his flames on his hair. It's kind of cool. No pun intended. And then the Frosty Treats though, that was a thing that did not make it into the final product because of legality reasons, right?
Oh, it did.
Oh, it did make it in the final product.
It did. Yes. So this is God, I think I was watching a Jaffe podcast or talking to one of you guys, but I think Twisted Metal 1 or 2 had Frosty Treats either in the description of Sweet Tooth,
Mm-hmm.
and there's an ice cream company somewhere, I think in the Midwest, called Frosty Treats, and they saw it and they sued Sony over it, but it got thrown out. I did not know about that case. So when I was making Small Brawl, I looked at Twisted Metal 1 and 2, and somewhere, I guess I saw Frosty Treats and implemented it, not knowing about the previous lawsuit. And then lo and behold, after I left Sony, I got a call from the lawyer saying, hey, we're getting sued by Frosty Treats.
Oh god.
Do you know where this came from? And I was just like,
Mm.
oh crap. It was like I copied one of the old games. I don't, or one of my artists did. I actually don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
And basically they said, yeah, this company is suing us. And I did not know that, 20 years later, I find out that it was the same company that did it the first time for like 1 and 2. And, and I was completely oblivious that this has happened the first time. And
Yeah.
I just repeated history. I'm actually surprised Sony didn't catch it. If they got bit by this once, why did their legal department not see this the second time?
Right. That's really wild. Especially that made it into the final product and you can still see it to this day.
Oh yeah, no, it's right on the side of the side of the truck. If you look at it in like Duck Station, like it's in there.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about all the little stuff like that. Like, and I think you said, well, actually, the thing that makes me wonder is, do you think the people that own Frosty Treats, like, they played the games? Like, how do they find that out to actually try to sue them?
They would have had to. I'm sure they had a kid playing it, and they're just like, "Hey, mom, dad, our logo's on this video game." They're like, "What?"
Hold up.
Wait
I'm
a
gonna
minute.
get a hold of my
Wait
lawyer.
a minute, little Jimmy John. Where'd you get this this devil's game?
Yeah. They never played Twisted Metal again. That's so crazy. But yeah,
I mean, I would have leaned into it. I would have made a deal with Sony, being like, "Hey, you're using our logo. We could sue you, or you could actually like promote us. If you happen to
right.
make a TV series 22 years later, and you're going to hand out ice cream at I don't know, a Comic-Con, could you use our ice cream?"
Yeah, it could have worked out. It could have been a buddy system.
That was way before games were really marketable, so
Yeah,
they didn't think that way.
No.
At the same time.
Yeah, they were like, "This is a fad." It's
Now,
die out.
if that happened now, they definitely would ask to work with them for sure, depending on how
you're right.
popular the game is.
Yep, you were right. You're 100% right there.
It'd probably also have to depend on if they're like the context of why they're in the game.
Yeah, obviously, if it's not like blowing up a Frosty Treats building, then obviously they're not gonna like that. But
it's just the two. It's like the people who own it, like in the game, like they're getting like destroyed by a car or something.
yeah, they're not gonna be happy about that.
Yeah.
Now, if it was 7-Eleven in Twisted Metal 2, then now you're talking.
Yeah, there you go. If only Could be a different timeline. 7-Eleven made in a TM1.
Yeah, the only indestructible building in the game.
Right. But all right, I think we've gone over all of the main points I was written down here for the game. Do we want to go over our final thoughts? So like overall out of 10 for Small Brawl?
Yeah, I wonder what Dave's gonna rank it.
I've got two rankings for it. I've got a 2003 ranking, and I got a now ranking.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. Well then, Dave, you go first then.
Really?
Yeah.
All
It's
right.
it's your game after all.
All right. So at the time, because we down-resed it and it looked like garbage on PS1 once we did that, and we had to make so many cuts, and Sony was hating on the game, and Incog was hating on the game, and the press was hating on the game. Like literally everybody who worked on Small Brawl didn't even want to talk about it. Like it's just like, what? No, I didn't work on that thing. What are you talking about? And thank God at the time, Twisted Metal Black Online, fell into our development cycle, and we made something really good that everybody was like raving about. But at the time, like it was a stain on our reputation, and it was not great. It was not great the way the game ended up and the way it was treated by everybody.
Yeah.
And back in the day, I probably would have given it a 4
Oof.
because of what it was. And to be honest, like I brought over a lot of designs from Vigilante 8 and Star Wars Demolition, kind of upping a lot of the mechanics. But because of building the engine at the same time we were building the game and having a very small team of about 12 people, nothing was actually working out the way we wanted or being as polished as as I would have liked overall. So I did view it as a 4. So in present day, kind of why I'm streaming now, is I kind of poked around on YouTube just out of curiosity. Like I typed in Vigilante 8 and I typed in not Small Brawl, but Twisted Metal, and I saw that there's being a lot of videos being made about the auto combat genre.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw your guys' videos, and I was just like, wow, they're actually talking positively about Small Brawl, like the level design, the creativity, and the vehicles and the environmental, hazards and things like that. And I started to look at it through a fresh pair of eyes, not the old, this isn't a real Twisted Metal, this isn't a top seller.
Yeah.
Like the core of what it was, you guys saw to the heart of it. And, I started to like the game that I wanted to, disown for all these years. And I was just like, yeah, the level design's good. The environmentals are good. We got a really, a lot of good hidden secrets and characters. And yes, while the endings are not, straight up Calypso screwing everybody over,
Mm-hmm.
the endings are pretty good too in a lot of aspects.
Right.
So I started to fall in love with, one of my old projects again. And Duck Station upping the graphics and making it look like what the original PS2 version was going to look like. I was just like, wow, this thing had so much potential and was really had a major uphill battle.
Yeah.
Throughout the development and just the release itself. But I can see what it was supposed to be now through, you guys' fresh pair of eyes and what Duck Station made it look like. So I'm going to put it about a 7.5. It's still buggy as hell. We got some weird tracking and seeking shit going on with freezes, which I still don't understand to this day.
Yeah, the 180 freezes. Yeah.
Yeah. We got
I think it's
incomplete
awesome.
bosses. We had to reuse all the specials, like Crimson Fury, Spectres, and Warthogs are all the same special, with just slightly different, seeking and graphics. So we couldn't make a lot of unique stuff because of the time frame we had to make the game in the small team size.
Yeah.
But I want to give it a 7.5, in today's standards, because it had some really good ideas. It just didn't have the support it needed.
Hell yeah. And that's commendable that you're not just, I rate this game 10 out of 10.
No, not at all. This is nowhere near my best project, but it was the project with the most heart. Like it really was the little engine that could.
Yeah, and you can really see that like in the final product, honestly. And as for the newer guys here, Winter and Drew, I'm really curious. Drew, what are you gonna give this out of 10?
Well, I want to go with 10. 10 out of 10. I think Goodrich is being humble, being modest,
So-
but he created something that I think was successful and something that the other 4 PS1 Twisted Metals maybe didn't do as well. Where it's just thoughtful. It's fun. It's not afraid of being what it is. It wanted to set out to be a delightful, fun child version of Twisted Metal, and did it brilliantly. It did it in a way that it doesn't take itself seriously and lets you laugh with it, and lets you appreciate everything that it does, because it's the type of game that I want every game to be. A game that doesn't want to waste any space, any thoughts, any ideas. It really makes you feel like every amount of effort possible went into it, and I think it's commendable. Sure, did it execute on everything it possibly could have? No, but given the circumstances, I think it's about as good as you can possibly get for a video game. So 10 out of 10.
Damn, I respect that, and I agreed with everything you said. Winners, are you do you feel about the same, or are you gonna be more critical? I'm really curious.
I think for once I will actually be a little bit more critical.
Ooh,
My ranking would probably be maybe 6.5 or 7 out of 10.
all right.
Yeah, just because I like a lot of the levels. I think they're really cool. I always like playing that golf level and just hearing that guy yell in the goddamn background. It sounds like, yeah, I'm not even gonna say that. It's probably not. But
The greatest mystery as to what he says. Everybody
Bubba.
asks. Everybody
I don't know,
asks what he
man.
says. All I did was ask Tommy Tallarico Studios, give me indistinct headhunter chatter, and we put it in the game. And it only plays. It's not part of the soundtrack. It's only around that specific area. And to this day, 20 years later, everybody thinks he says something, and it's completely ridiculous what everybody thinks he says. It's
Wait.
just like, he says, "I want tacos," and I was just like, "No,
Oh,
he doesn't
No.
say that at all."
when I heard that the first time, like because we grew up in that era where like the whole Middle East. I swear to God, I thought this guy was saying Allah Akbar. I'm like, oh shit, what the fuck?
Oh, God, dude, what the hell, man? No,
Oh,
he
Wait,
God.
says nothing. He literally says nothing.
But yeah, but I was like, oh wait a second, okay, I'm just tripping. I don't know. I just played too much like SOCOM and too much
Yeah.
yeah, there was like a third person, I can't remember. Conflict Desert Storm. So like I played that a lot back in the day. So that like, whenever I hear that. But anyway, besides that, not to go on a tangent. I think the car's pretty cool, but again, like what Goodrich says, some of the specials are kind of reused. As much as I like all the like some of the levels, there's some of them that I just don't like. Like again, Iron Gore, like it's way too big. It's just a slog fest to get through, and then the last level, again, if you're able to get like more weapons out of facing was it Peacemeal, then it would be a lot more better to play through, especially on hard mode. I'm kind of going off of my experience just playing on hard mode. Just the bosses are fucking bullet sponges. I mean, holy hell. But I love the soundtrack. To me, what really stands out about this game is the soundtrack. I think it just kicks ass. It really pays homage to kind of the older Twisted Metals, which I like, but kind of like a remix sort of way. Which YouTube probably thankfully hasn't banned yet.
Thank
or
you,
due to the
YouTube.
copyright. Yeah, thanks YouTube.
I doubt they ever will. Small
Yeah.
World
Once the game
never
gets
got big enough
remade,
to get on the radar.
then
Yeah.
if it gets remade, then those will start getting copyrighted.
Yeah.
But definitely when the driving could be a little bit more improved. Like sometimes it's like I'm trying to turn that backwards turn. You go like in an opposite direction. That just constantly messes me up all the time. And so it definitely leads me to be a little bit frustrated. So if I guess if I wasn't playing on hard mode, I would say if it was on normal, I'd probably say like a 7 because it'd be a little bit more bearable. But I think 6.5 for playing hard mode. Just it's it sucks when I'm trying to go a certain direction. I'm trying to do certain things in the game, and because it wasn't as polished as it could be. Like it could be
Yeah.
definitely frustrating, but I like it. It's not that I don't like playing the game. I like playing the game. But me growing up, Twisted Metal 4 was my game, and for me that game feels so damn solid, surprisingly.
Yeah.
When compared to like Small Brawl. But I like Small Brawl. I think it's cool. I like the weapons. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and I think it's a really good kids game that probably should have gotten more love. I don't think the criticisms of back in the day were justified.
Damn right. But yeah, definitely fair. Critical, but
Yeah.
fair.
No, I like your assessment. I mean, the controls were jank. They were super jank, especially in reverse. And the way that the specials, the combo special would just slip out of the car when you're trying to go
that's
backwards.
the biggest problem I have.
Yeah.
Is that
I
always
found
use my special by accident all the time.
Yeah, they're awful. I hate them. I found my old notes. I actually put a confirmation with one of the shoulder buttons in order to launch those, and somehow they got taken out. I
Oh.
think I know by who, but much like Vigilante 8, like where you have to use the machine gun as the last input to make sure you really want to do that. That was planned.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact that we were writing an engine from scratch on PS1, because we couldn't get the original like Twisted Metal 1 and 2 engines because single track wouldn't allow it. And then we apparently hired a bunch of their old programmers, and they built it from memory from scratch during development.
That's
and we got a
wild.
lot of the weird same bugs out of it, but it was a pretty impressive feat. But yeah, the controls are janky as hell in Small Brawl. I fully admit that. Like that's a good observation.
I will say though, and I'll kind of change my assessment a little bit. I would say it's a solid 7 because I do appreciate that you can actually save the games like normal, and the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you die, you just restart the level, and if you die once in one level and you go to the next, you still get your lives back, so you start from scratch, which makes it way better time playing through the game. So that's definitely an improvement compared to like the previous games, except for Twisted Metal Black.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely took that cue from Black, which is definitely the right way to go.
Yeah. So that brings up my score a little bit, to be honest.
All right. And Kong, what do you give it out of 10?
I'd give it a 9, I think. I think 9 would be the perfect score for it. I mean, because the only issues I really have with it are just fact, like the controls are a little, I don't know how to explain them. There's sometimes they feel like they're tighter, and then other times they feel super slippery. I don't know the reasoning for that exactly. And the special weapon thing is a very irritating aspect of the game for sure. Like I lose my specials constantly.
Yeah.
And the hard mode bosses. The whole thing with the bosses is I don't play the game on hard mode because I just don't want to deal with it. Like it's just obnoxious. I don't like how much health they have because you just feel like you're, especially on now slaying, you're just waiting for weapons to come back. Like you're not even doing anything most of the time.
It's
you're just driving
ridiculous.
around in circles, just waiting for weapons to respawn. Even if you bring weapons over from the previous level, it's still not enough.
Yeah.
Especially if you get unlucky and you fight like Darkside, Hammerhead, and Slam, you're gonna waste all your weapons on those enemies, and then you have to fight Peacemeal on top of those enemies.
Yeah. What was it, Trapper? I remember one time on hard mode, I put like 12 power missiles into the guy, and he hadn't even gotten half. He just barely got half health.
I believe he takes 30.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think it's 30.
I apologize.
That's the one problem I have.
Poor design decision. You're 100% right on that. That was a terrible design decision. Whoever came up with that.
They're fine on normal mode though. Like they don't have.
I agree.
They don't have an obnoxious amount of health on normal mode. That's why I play on normal instead.
Yeah,
they're fine.
So 9 out of 10. I agree though.
Yeah, and it's obviously has some bug problems. It has like classic stuff like Axel's name is misspelled in the save menu.
There's an interesting rumor about that, and
Axel.
I think it's half true. They gave us concept art with Axel in the wheelchair, which was Sony's design. Funny enough, and then when they're just like backtracking on that, they're just like, hey, what about his sister? And they gave us kind of like could be, his sister could be his brother, like a very androgynous looking design of a mechanic style character.
Yeah.
For Axel, and they actually gave us the other spelling of the name, and I think we were entertaining putting that in, and we found that we didn't have enough time to redo cinematics or build, a different style vehicle that wasn't the classic Axel, which was based off his wheelchair design in the game. And I think it kind of stuck from there. And some other people picked up on that, but I don't know if that's 100% true. Like,
I mean, if it is, I just thought it was a typo. Like, I honestly thought it was just a typo.
It could have been a typo. It definitely, during that development cycle, it could have been because there is an alt character design out there of Axel. If you look it up, you might find it. And it's a mechanic style character that is very different from the Axel that you know. And it has the different spelling underneath that character too.
Yeah, I found it. I'll put it in the Discord right now.
It has the flipped name, right? Or am I remembering things incorrectly?
It does, yeah.
That should have been the wrench guy in Black Online.
It might have been.
Wrench guy.
It is wrench guy.
Yeah, that's real wrench guy.
He's back.
There we go. That's the one.
Back
Oh yeah,
again.
it's Axley. Axley.
Which is the proper spelling for Axel.
It is.
As a noun.
It's American versus English, right? If I remember right.
English that's fake. It's not real.
That's pretty cool. But yeah, I guess bouncing off of Kong's, I have to agree. It's a 9 out of 10 for me as well. I don't think there is a perfect 10 out of 10 Twisted Metal. I'll just put that out there. But this is my favorite one in the series. It used to be Black for as long as I can remember. Ever since I first played TM Black, I always loved the gameplay of that one. I like the dark atmosphere and all that stuff. But coming back to it now as an adult and making all this content on these games, I just honestly had the most fun with Small Brawl. Obviously, I think that it comes back to the level design. Another big thing that we didn't really get too much into is I think the roster is really damn good in Small Brawl. It has pretty much every character that I would ever want in a Twisted Metal in the game, except Pizza Boy. We need more Pizza Boy. But everybody that I play in this game, I have a really good time with. Except I'd say Warthog is the one exception, but I can even still find
Warthog and Axel. Yeah.
No, Axel's fine. I like Axel in this game.
I can't stand Axel in this game. I think his special's so bad.
Skill issue.
I mean, maybe, but even when you hit someone with it, it still doesn't do anything. Like, it still doesn't do much damage. I wish it did. I wish it was stronger. It's
definitely a weaker special compared to most of them in the game. I will definitely say that. And his armor could be a little better, but I don't know. I never really had much issues with Axel. And like even Warthog, he's obviously the worst in the game compared to like every other character, but I can still find like a fun time with him because the game itself just makes up for it with the levels and stuff. But another big thing too that I like about Small Brawl is the AI is this is the only game that I can play in the series where the AI doesn't feel like bullshit. Like they don't cheat. They don't unlimited weapon spam you or freeze spam you. Like they will freeze you. They will hit you with their specials, but they're not going to sit there and constantly freeze you over and over and over again and then constantly hit you with their special over and over again. Like, because Dave has spoken about this before, where he went out and purposely made the AI work to the players' rules, where they have to pick up weapons on the level just like you do in order to use them, and they have to wait for their specials to regen just like you do. And the AI just feels really smart in this game. They also do fight each other as well when you're not around. I don't think they fight each other as much as they do in like TM3 and 4, but it is noticeable. I've definitely witnessed it myself a couple times where like in TM Black, TM2, TM1, you're never going to see that. Like you'll never see them fighting each other. And they're always going to be going after you 100% and being overly aggressive, which I just never had that feeling with Small Brawl. And I know some people might say, oh, it makes it too easy then. The AI is too easy. There's dumb. And it's like, no, the AI is still fine. It's still a challenge. It's not an easy game. It's really not. I think even on normal, I think it's still a decent amount of challenge. Like, I can get through a normal playthrough pretty easily. But I will still say, like, if you're first time player or just like not super used to the game, I think a normal playthrough is still a decent challenge. Whereas, yes, hard is definitely more difficult, and it is kind of BS with the amount of health that the boss characters get. I will say that. So, in my opinion, the hard mode is definitely not as fun as medium, but it's still fine. It's still okay. My only real gripes of the game that bring it down from a 10 is what you guys already spoke about. Gridiron Gore is just kind of meh. Not enough weapon pickups on the final level. And the issues with the reversing controls, like if you back up, sometimes there's a glitch with the inverted controls. I've gotten used to it over the years where I expect it to happen. So I've gotten used to knowing like, okay, now my controls are going to be inverted after I back up here. So my brain is like wired to where it doesn't bother me. Like I'm just so used to it now. But it used to really annoy me. And then of course the accidental specials is also an annoyance for sure. But just something I've gotten used to. I just kind of let it go, I suppose. But if those few issues were fixed, this would easily be a 10 out of 10 for me. Like I could play this game every time, never have a bad experience, always have fun. And even with the issues I've already spoken about, I still have a great time every time I play Small Brawl. Like it's still a lot of fun. And it pains me when people say that they don't like this game, because everybody I know who's given it a chance has either at least accepted that the game is okay, or they've just had a blast. I've never heard anybody that say they hate this game after they've played it. So for people who say that sucks, I can tell that they've just never played it themselves or never gave it a proper chance.
It's always because it's kids, so it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's always it's people that never played the game before 99% of the time.
Yep. And even seeing gameplay of it doesn't do it justice. Like you have to try it yourself. Give it a shot. And yeah, I can attest, like you will have a good time with it. So yeah, 9 out of 10, easy. But yeah, I think did anybody have any last questions for Dave before we end the episode?
Yeah, I got a couple last statements if nobody has any last questions.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
On the 3 bonus levels and now slaying, the car glows green. Why?
Oh, I wanted nighttime levels in Small Brawl. So growing up as a kid, I used to have a lot of glow in the dark like toys. Like you'd have like the little racetrack cars, like Hot Wheels and stuff that had glow in the dark cars. I love glow in the dark toys. I don't know what it is. I love that kind of pale green, sickly, ghostly glow, and I wanted to incorporate it into this. So when we had the black, basically the Twisted Metal Black engine at our disposal with real-time lighting effects, which PS2 could do, I was going to have the cars actually glow and light up the environment as they raced around, including the weapons. So you'd fire a missile and you'd see it like fire off into the dark distance, but you'd see like the glow on the ground or the walls if it was close enough to it. And then when they explode, they would have like a big flash of light. When we got down res to PS1, PlayStation 1 can't handle real-time lighting effects. It simply cannot do it. And I was just heartbroken. So I was just like, one of those emotions. I was just like, fuck it. I'm going to get this in if it kills me. So I literally, I talked to the programmers, like, we can't do this. We don't got time to do this. We're not even going to attempt it because PS1 really can't do this effectively.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at games like Vigilante 8 and the casino level, all those lens flares and everything, that's all faked. That's not real-time lighting effects. Everything is baked into the textures. So I had that kind of epiphany moment, if we got to go PS1 rules, I'm going to do it. So I went in and remade all the textures in kind of glow-in-the-dark looking, and it wasn't particularly successful, but glow-in-the-dark looking textures. So I turned them to kind of greens or the reds that you would see in glow-in-the-dark toys back in the day, And I, once I did that, I noticed that the shadow underneath the cars, it looked like a shadow, and things that give off light sources don't give off shadows. So I had the either smart or very stupid idea of turning the black shadow into a green shadow to kind of emulate or fake a glow underneath the car that it would have been casting if we had real-time lighting effects. So that is why you see the glowing effect on the cars, that greenish, sickly greenish color that a lot of people are just like, what the hell is this? And I'm like, that's glow in the dark. And they're just like, okay. They just kind of
I
like
think it was
wave it
genius.
away like I have no idea what that is.
Knowing that,
Yeah, I
that's
didn't know what it
that's
was,
really
but-
brilliant. That was the case. I thought of just being targeted by something. Like I thought there was some imminent attack that I had to look out for.
No, I was trying to fake glow in the dark colors and glow in the dark lighting because we could not do real lighting effects in the game. It killed me. It killed me not to have those in there. That was like the number one thing. If I could redo Small Brawl, that is one thing I would do.
Wasn't Spectre supposed to be glow in the dark too?
Yeah.
Like the
Yes,
green
his
parts
color
on
scheme
him?
was based around glow in the dark colors because he's a ghost. He's a specter. So I wanted that very ghostly color palette to him, including that green stripe down his center. And his car design was based off the Speed Racer car because I love that car so much from the old cartoons.
That's right. Yeah, I always thought that was super cool with the glowing under the car because I remember that was one of that as a kid. That's why the last level in the tournament was always my favorite because of just how the cars glowed. I was like, that's fucking cool. And
Yeah, I
now
think it worked. I mean, it tricked kids into thinking.
Oh yeah,
Dark, I
Trick-
guess.
it,
So, yeah.
even as an adult, I still thought it had a glowing effect until Dave told me how it was done, and I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just took the textures, went into Photoshop, and just started playing with the color palette and turning them green, like the kind of glow in the dark green,
Yeah,
and sampling that from different toys and trying to make that work. But it's a real, it's a janky way of doing it, but I'm glad I did because on DuckStation it actually doesn't look too bad.
yeah, it looks really good on DuckStation.
Yeah, the upscaling helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I appreciate you guys' honest assessment of the game. Like, you gave it a higher score than I ever would have. Like, I knew the flaws of it back in the day, and I knew the ire it drew. Twisted Metal established it in a universe that was sometimes wacky, but always had a serious tone to it. And us, putting Small Brawl out into that universe with a very different friendly-ish, I should say, take. We knew that it was not going to be received well. Like, I always use this as an example where it's just like, okay, you guys like Dark Souls, you like Demon Souls, you like Elden Ring. Guess what? We got a child-friendly version where all the swords are nerfed or literally made out of nerf weapons. Enjoy. Like, you got to expect the backlash at that point. But
Yeah,
I'm really happy that in current day you guys actually like what was offered and you see the heart of what it was. So that's always been a delight for me, and that's actually one of the reasons I really enjoy doing a podcast with you guys, is talking about the different aspects and getting different perspectives on what these games are. So with that, as part of my appreciation, I've given you some wonderful screenshots, including one of the Lost Paint Brawl levels, which
oh,
feel free to use. It's in the chat, Discord.
oh heck yeah! Is
Um,
it, it's like Cloverleaf one?
Yeah, that's the bumper car level. Like, this was all in an abandoned amusement park.
Wow.
So this
Oh,
is one of the
snap.
ones that was for the Quake style levels. Yeah, look at that handsome devil.
The TM wiki page, yeah.
Looks like a guy who lifts.
I am no stranger to the gym.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, so what else can I add to this? We had a ton, or sorry, I should say I had a ton of cut designs for Small Brawl. So when I joined Incognito, I thought I was moving into like the next serious, Twisted Metal in the franchise.
Yeah.
And talking with Jaffe and talking with Scott, they're just like, we're out of ideas, we're burnt out on it. Like, coming from Vigilante 8, go wild. Like come up with really good ideas that that are new and fresh to the franchise, but stay within Twisted Metal. And I came in with like a giant book of ideas for Small Brawl, which once we aged it down, I should say Small Brawl, but for whatever the next Twisted Metal was going to be, once I found out it was Small Brawl, and the average age of 12-year-olds, I had to cut a bunch of these designs, but I had designs along the lines of like all the weapons could charge up to 3 different states. So Power Missile could be charged up into a more powerful Power Missile, or an even more powerful one. Or I also had combos for all the individual specials for the characters. So Mr. Grimm could use his standard special as an offensive weapon, but with a combo input, he could teleport across the level to a random location, or he could create a bone cage around somebody and entrap them. So he had like an offense, a defense, and a utility, and I had the same for all the characters. And I also had a weird shielding system where you could shield in different quadrants around your character. So you could concentrate your shields, to the front, the right, the left, or the back, and mitigate, 100% of the damage. Or if you did it across 2 quadrants, you could get, 75% damage reduction, or 50, or 25 if you want to go a full 360. This is the reason why you see the Small Brawl radar broken into 4 sections. If you guys have never looked at it, you see it cut into 4 different sections with the front, the left, the right, and the back.
Right.
It was so that when you saw radar weapons coming in, you could hold the R1 to block that section, or the R1 and R2 to block your front and right hand side. And then if you held down all the all the shoulder buttons, R1, R1, R2, or L1, L2, you would get a full shield all the way around you and have 100% chance of blocking it, but only 25% damage reduction, because I never liked the fact that you put on a shield and you would negate all damage from an attacker.
Yeah.
And these are crazy ideas. Like, these might have been okay, like a couple of them for advanced Twisted Metal players, but once I found out it was for 12-year-old players, it's like, nope, can't do any of these. So I completely threw them out.
Too
Because
complicated.
I knew the audience at the time. I also had like a weird dodge system too, where you could strafe left or right using like a turbo dodge system. Also forwards and backwards. So I wanted to slow down the missiles enough. And you saw this a little bit with like Warthog, where if they came in slow enough, you could see them coming. You could actually put up a shield. And I wanted the ability to, like, you saw a power missile charging up from an AI, and you could hit L1, L2, and you would basically dodge strafe 10 feet to the left, and completely, if you had the right timing, avoid that attack completely. So I had like a whole shielding and dodge strafe system, ready to go for whatever the next advanced Twisted Metal was going to be.
Damn.
I know. It was, like I said, at the beginning of this podcast, I have probably enough ideas that are interesting enough to build out 2 or 3 more auto combat games. But it was completely overboard for what the audience was for Small Brawl and PS1 at that time.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of crazy shit that I am glad it didn't make it in, but it was interesting that I had a lot of the stuff planned for the next Twisted Metal title.
Right. And hey, Sony, if you're listening, call this man. He's got ideas.
Use your damn IPs, Sony.
We'll see. I mean,
Please.
even after the show, I'm not hearing anything about the next game,
No.
which is it's very sad. It's kind of disappointing.
I still have hopes that at the Game Awards this year we'll hear something, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they can't do a AAA. They can't do a AAA with an auto combat, but they could do a AA or an A, like a budget title with some interesting new concepts and using the old IP. But I don't know. I would hate to think this franchise has died. There's still so many people out there who enjoy it.
Yeah, for real. And we've seen that firsthand with this Discord with how many people have come in there and hung out, and people have been enjoying this content here with our podcast. It's you know, it's definitely a dedicated fan base. So hopefully one day we'll get a new game to play and make new content on.
Yeah, if not, maybe I'll do a spiritual successor. I'll include all the pet small brawl levels too, like the sushi level and the bathroom level and the bumper pool level.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. Just sucks that Twisted Metal is not as, utilized by Sony. Although, I mean, I'm
Right.
holding out hope for season 2 of the show. So if that's not
I'm sure it
canceled,
will
then there's
happen.
there's
It was
still
really
hope.
popular on Peacock. So I mean, I know it's Peacock numbers, but it was still like very popular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
I
they
mean-
probably would greenlight another season.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of internet review sites calling it out as like being surprisingly good. Even Jaffe said he liked it, which was shocking
Yeah.
to me. So there's a lot of hunger out there for it right now, and hopefully they ride that wave before it kind of fades out again.
Right. Because sadly, it's already starting to fade a little bit. So
It is.
Yeah.
hopefully, well, just got to keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully we hear some good news soon. But I
Heck yeah.
think that's gonna do it for this episode here. We got a lot of amazing tidbits and behind the scenes information from the man himself, Goodrich. So definitely give him some love on his YouTube channel. We'll have it linked below in the description. He's almost to 500 subs. Once he gets there, again, he might have some more tidbits and cool stuff that he could show for you guys. So let's get him there, guys. But with that, I think we are good to go. Thank you all for watching and for listening. We'll hopefully see you next week for the next episode. I believe we're going to be going over Twisted Metal head on. So that should be a pretty good episode as well. I have a feeling me and Kong are not going to hold back. So
So it's not going to be
God.
good for the fans of Head On.
it's going to
My
be
God.
it's going to be interesting to say the least.
We'll say the PS2 version specifically, not
Right.
the PSP version.
Yeah, for sure. But with
10 out
that,
of 10.
10 out of 10.
No, so that's the PS2 version's getting like a fucking 2. But, yeah.
Oh my God. We're not there yet. Next week. All right. Have a good one, everybody. See you.
All right. Always a good time. Wololo.